And I'll call to order the October 19th, 2020 regular meeting of the Haywood County Board of Commissioners. And our first order of business is our Pledge of Allegiance, and after that I'm going to ask Pastor Josh Frazier to come forward for invocation. So if everyone would please stand for the pledge.
Let us pray. God in heaven, thank you for being the good God that you are. We thank you for giving us the many blessings, one of which being able to live in such a beautiful area, such a great place. Thank you for each person that's in this room, and I pray that you would continue to bless each one of us, and we ask that we would utilize those blessings in a good way, in a way that would bring kindness and love and unity within our community. I pray for every person that's here today that has to make decisions. I pray that you would give wisdom and understanding in all that we do. We pray all this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Josh. Okay, our next order of business is a call for public hearings, and we have two of those. The first call for public hearing is to be held November 2nd, 2020 at 9 a.m. in the historic courtroom of the Haywood County Historic Courthouse located at 215 North Main Street, Waynesville, North Carolina, for consideration of the 2021 schedule of values. And is Judy here? Judy Hickman, our tax assessor. And is Jimmy here tonight? Judy? Okay. Right there.
Good
Welcome,
evening.
Judy.
I'm not used to being this far up on the agenda.
Okay.
As most of you know, the staff has been working to complete the 2021 reappraisal. North Carolina General Statute 105-317 requires a uniform schedule of values to be used when appraising real property. The schedule of values contains the rates to be applied to land and buildings to estimate the market value of all the properties in the county. Incorporated into the schedule of values are building cost figures derived from national data that have been adjusted to reflect local costs. These schedules set forth values for appropriate unit of measure for using in appraising land and buildings. The statute also requires the assessor to submit the proposed schedule, standards, and rules to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration, and to place the schedules in the office of the assessor for public inspection. So tonight I am submitting a copy of the proposed schedules. By law, I am required to have a copy in my office for the public to inspect prior to a public hearing. However, we're going to go ahead and place one in the county manager's office, and we will have them placed online first thing in the morning for public inspection for anybody who wishes to look over them. And I'm requesting a public hearing for the November 2nd Commissioner meeting at 9 a.m.
Okay. And does Jimmy Tanner want to say anything? Or did you want to say anything, Jimmy?
No, other than, like I say, we're in the process now to where this is the wonderful time of presenting the schedules to the commissioners. This is a lengthy process of getting them adopted. We have the public hearing, the commissioners adopt it, and then there's a period of appeal that someone could appeal if they objected to it. But, the schedule of values is a pretty complicated book. It's, as you can see, it's probably 500 pages. It's got all the rates, the calculations, and the figures that we use to do the reappraisal here in Haywood County. The way to think of it is like a toolbox that the assessor's office has to do a value on every property in the county. And when you think about that, we got to come up with one set of guidelines that values every type of property that's possible here in the county. So it's right lengthy and complicated, but once we put these schedules together, then that's what we have to adhere to and follow. We have to do this process by statute before January 1. The values is effective as of January 1, so we're here telling you this is the schedule that we come up with to value these properties a few months ahead, but in that toolbox is the tools that we need to be able to adjust values if things fluctuate one way or the other based on the economy or the market or whatever may occur over the next few months. We'll be sending the value notices out probably around February, March timeframe. It takes us a while. We have to consider all the market data through the end of the year. So once we do that, that'll set off the appeal period. With the COVID-19 especially, we've got a lot of options, and we've implemented another option for the citizens of Haywood County called electronic appeal. From the convenience of their home at 3 o'clock in the morning, they can go online and submit their appeal. They don't have to mail anything. They don't have to call us. So we've implemented that along with this 2021 reappraisal, for the convenience of the taxpayers. They'll still be able to mail in the form if they want to. And we still plan on holding a customer service thing to help the citizens that may not know, I got my value notice. I really don't know. I hadn't bought or sold a property. I don't know what it's worth. So we're going to put together a customer service, what we call a taxpayer appeal assistance program, where we can help the citizens realize if the value is reasonable or not. If it's not, we'll help them put together the information to follow through on the appeal. Now, that's contingent upon COVID-19 in February and March, but we're having both of them options available. If things is not good, then we'll certainly do the mail-in and the electronic appeal. If things is not bad with the virus at that time, we'll certainly do the customer service and the walk-ins, whatever. So that's about it, other than if y'all have any questions.
Anybody have any questions? I know the last two revals we've had limited sales, and I don't think you've got that problem this time.
We don't have that problem.
Yeah.
The reappraisal, it's a long process. This has been a couple of years in the working. A lot of work, a lot of data that we put together, and if you're in this business, that book probably doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people other than us that use it every day. But we tasked with coming up with what the market value is of January 1, 2021. This is going to be the time where values is on the rise. So everybody's like, what's my value going to be? We can't tell them what the value is until we finish and we send them that value notice. But what I tell people every day when I talk to them is, look around your neighborhood. If you really want to be, we want people to appeal to property. I'll be the first to tell you, everything's not going to be perfect. We're going to have a lot of the properties that's right where they need to be. We're going to have some that's probably maybe over, some under. We kind of always refer to it as, the taxpayer help us help them. If we've got a value that's incorrect, we certainly want to know about it. Yeah. We don't want to live with a bad value that we're going to hear about for 4 years. So, if we got a value that's not right, for whatever reason, we want to know about it, where we can fix it. And so that's why we have all these appeal processes. So the market's up. If somebody's kind of inquisitive about what my value may be, look around your neighborhood and see what some properties are selling for. When you get your value notice and you want to appeal your property, that's the same information that we're going to be wanting you to supply to us. Tell me what some properties is in the neighborhood that's sold that makes us believe that the values is not what we have on it. So, that's the best way to look at it. Look at some properties around your neighborhood, see what was sold for in the last 6 months. Values is good, and that's good. We joke and say, well, we tell people how wealthy you are, and I know they don't look at it like that, but when the economy's good, values is rising. Nobody wants to buy a home and the value is 50% of what they paid for it 5-6 years earlier, and we've had them times in the past. Fortunately, we're not in that cycle. Values is going up. Other than paying the property taxes, it's a great thing, but that's just a cycle. But values is up, and that's good. It really is.
Anybody have any questions for Jimmy or Judy? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion that we have the public hearing on November 2nd, 2020, as it is in item 1 of the call for public hearings.
So move.
Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, the next call for public hearing is to be held on November 16th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. in the historic courtroom of the Haywood County Historic Courthouse located at 215 North Main Street, Waynesville, North Carolina, for consideration of a wireless telecommunication tower application pursuant to Haywood County Code Ordinance Chapter 115, Wireless Telecommunications Facilities. Development Services Coordinator Jody Ferguson. Hey, Jody.
Hi.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm here to request a public hearing for the November 16th meeting for an application for a wireless telecommunication tower pursuant our Haywood County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 115, wireless telecommunications facilities.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Jody? I know she's been looking forward to this all day. Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion that we have the public hearing as described in item 2 of section 3 of the public hearings of our agenda.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Okay, then our next order of business is public hearings, and we have a public hearing for approval of a wireless telecommunication facility application pursuant to Haywood County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 115, the wireless telecommunications facilities operations. We have our operations director, Chris Boyd, here tonight to speak to that. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. We're conducting this public hearing for consideration of an application for a different and unique wireless telecommunication facility. This is not the conventional facility that you've seen in the past. It's not the conventional application. Frank and I have worked collectively on this application because it doesn't meet part of the guidelines of our ordinance because it doesn't need to qualify for those guidelines. Because there is no tower associated with this site. This site is an internet service provider based on satellite service. We'll have a microwave dish only with a very small 25 by 28 fenced in total facility. It's very simple, it's very compact, so it's very unconventional in the sense that every one of you are used to seeing a tower that is going to be 100 or 120 or maybe 140 feet. So this will not be. The microwave dish, again, is proposed not to be taller than 8 feet off the ground. So it's a very simple set of plans, very simple diagram, very simple facility. And here, from Velocitel, on behalf of Biosat, is Mr. John Kovacs. He's going to provide the summary of his application as well. I just gave you a brief overview. I'd like to invite Mr. Kovacs up to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Board of Commissioners, my name is John Kovacs. I am here on behalf of Viasat. Viasat is seeking a special use permit approval from this board for the installation of a wireless telecommunications facility under Chapter 115 of the Haywood County Zoning Ordinance. As Mr. Boyd had stated, we're installing a satellite dish. The dish itself measures 6 feet in diameter, and it will be attached to a 5-foot tall pole. The pole itself will be anchored to the ground via a concrete pier. The dish itself will be attached to the center line or the center of the pole, so no portion of the installation will be more than 8 feet above the ground. Along with the dish, with the installation are 2 small equipment cabinets. Both of those cabinets measure roughly 2 feet by 2 feet by about 3 feet tall, so no portion of that installation will be greater than 5 feet above the ground. The installation itself will be surrounded by a cedar wood fence. We're proposing to install an 8-foot tall fence around the equipment area, so therefore no portion of the installation will actually be visible from Highway 74, as the top point of the antenna is roughly 8 feet above the ground. The purpose of this installation is to provide internet service to all residents of Haywood County. This is satellite-based internet service, so unlike a tower, we are only looking to provide literally a link between the orbiting satellite and the fiber backbone that currently runs along Highway 74. So this specific location was ideal for the placement because it has a clear look angle to the southwest, which is critical to transmit and receive data between the orbiting satellite and the internet cloud. Also, because there is a splice point literally at the intersection of Arrington Acres Road and Highway 74, this was the most advantageous location. This location itself is more than 1 mile from any federally protected lands. It is also, we did look at possibility of co-locating on any public facilities, but there are no publicly owned properties within this fiber splice location. So the location we've selected we have determined to be the most important or viable location for this installation. Again, the purpose of the installation is to serve Haywood County. This is the only installation that we're proposing for the county. The next installation that we're looking at is to the west in Swain County, and then the next installation to the east is in Buncombe County. So unlike a cellular network which has a number of towers scattered throughout the area, this is the sole installation that Viasat is proposing for the entire county. So all residents of the county will benefit from this installation because this is the only one that we're proposing to install. The way the installation works is a residential or commercial user who has satellite-based internet service. Their facility or their house will have a small dish on the exterior of their property. That dish talks to the satellite. The satellite then beams a internet address or a Google search request down to this installation that we're proposing, which we refer to as a satellite access node. That satellite access node is again connected to high-speed fiber network that runs along 74, and that our Google search request or internet request is received from the internet cloud, broadcast back up to the satellite. Satellite then beams that signal back to the residential or commercial user. So again, it's a very minor installation. Again, no portion of the installation is taller than 8 feet. And again, it's all surrounded by a cedar wood fence, thereby protecting the view shed.
Does any of the commissioners have any questions?
I was just curious, what kind of buffer zone is required around that microwave dish? Several feet or?
I'm sorry?
A buffer zone, how big will the radius or diameter be around that particular dish?
So the lease area that we've acquired is 28 feet by 25 feet. We're fencing in that area. Because the link is in one direction, there really is no need for a buffer zone.
Okay.
It's literally a point-to-point link at 189 degrees.
Viasat, that's your company?
Yes, correct.
Do you own the satellite?
Viasat owns the satellite, correct.
Okay. I think I read something about your company a couple years ago. That's very encouraging technology. We have all kinds of trouble here in the mountains.
Yes, I can imagine with the terrain is very difficult, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Is this the first one of these that you've installed, or do you have more of these?
No, so this network is currently under construction, or in this case, going through the planning approval process. There are a number of installations that are currently in construction in Ohio and other areas of the Midwest, and Viasat is working its way east. So I'm specifically involved in projects between the Georgia-Florida border and the Virginia-Maryland border. So roughly every 50 or so miles is one of these installations, and they're currently either in the permitting stage or getting ready for construction stage.
I guess doing that much work, you must be banking on that they're going to work well.
I'm sorry?
I guess doing this many sites and doing that broad of an area, you're banking on that it's going to work very well.
Yeah, again, because the satellite is, covers a large geographical area, this is one of many that they're installing. So they all collectively work together in order to best serve the public.
What kind of data transfer speed have you acquired with this system?
I don't know, and I don't believe if I knew if I was able to say. I think it's proprietary information at this point, but it would be comparable to fiber to the home. So that type of uplink, downlink speeds. So faster than what Viasat is currently offering. This is their next generation network that they're working on deploying.
Does Viasat presently have any customers, or are you just installing all the infrastructure?
No, they presently offer today, and they do have customers.
Okay. And what is the cost?
I don't know. I'd have to refer to the website, but it's probably less than $99 per month, which is typically what you see offered by its competitors.
Okay. And where is it offered now?
It's nationwide.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you can go to the website and type in the zip code, and it'll tell you that they offer service. But again, it's relatively slow speed at this point, which is why they want to improve the coverage and improve the performance, because as we all know, everyone is very dependent upon internet access these days with everything that's happening.
What's the time frame?
We're looking to start construction, obviously, contingent upon approval and securing building permits. Viasat is looking to start construction at the end of Q4 2020 or beginning of Q1 2021.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, and then we'll have another public hearing after this, and then we'll have the public comment session, which is why some of y'all are here. So would anyone like to speak as to the subject of the wireless communication tower that was just described? And I'll open that public hearing up for that particular issue. Okay. Okay, seeing no one speak, I'll close the public hearing for that. And then we'll move on to the next public hearing will be to approve a funding application to the North Carolina Department of Commerce for the North Carolina Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Program. And our program administrator, David Francis, is here to describe that. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Before we get started, I want to go over just a few things. One, the first thing I want to talk about is on social media, somehow somebody shared some post with me over the weekend that this project has been described as some place for homeless housing project for that. As we go through the presentation, you'll learn that this project doesn't have anything to do with that at all. Okay? You'll see why that doesn't work in this facility, but I just want to clarify that if anybody had any issues or confusion about that. I just, hate that some things get blown out of proportion on social media, but this is one of those cases that this is not what's being described or discussed here. Part of the CDBG grant process with the public hearing is that we have to go through, dot some I's, cross some T's, go through some of the requirements they have during this public hearing. So this is going to take a little bit longer than a normal public hearing that we've had in these situations. And also, if anybody that comes from the public has a question, I'll be able to address that this evening as part of the public hearing. We submit our minutes over to the folks down in Raleigh as part of this process as well, too. Okay, thank you. So the public hearing today, October 19th, will provide an explanation and description of the 2020 North Carolina Department of Commerce Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus, or CDBG-CV program. We are present to discuss the purpose of the public hearing for Haywood County CDBG-CV funding application. The purpose of the public hearing is to obtain citizens' views and to allow response from the public for the funding proposals and answer any questions posed by the citizens as laid out in Haywood County Citizen Engagement Program. Is what we did last month when we did the first CDBG hearing process. That covers that. This public hearing will cover Haywood County's community development needs, the development of proposed activities, and a review of the program compliance before the submission of Haywood County's CDBG-CV funding application to the state of North Carolina. Haywood County proposes to request funding for the North Carolina Department of Commerce CDBG-CV program for the implementation of Armory upgrade to serve as a temporary emergency shelter due to a state of an emergency, natural disaster, or an unexpected event where citizens need temporary shelter. Haywood County's current temporary shelter, emergency shelter at the Health and Human Services building on Paragon Parkway has had its capacity reduced by half as a result of social distancing and COVID-19. HHS building also poses other challenges because the space used for the temporary shelter consists of the building, lobby, training room, and meeting room. A possible COVID exposure in any of these spaces could potentially shut down the building for a few days. This would be devastating to those who need access to those services provided to our Human and Health Services Agency. This would be, as I said, service would be devastating. The Armory offers a standalone building with space that can fully be dedicated to the temporary emergency shelter during a time of need in the county. The request for funding will also be utilized to support mountain projects and implementation of a funding pool that will provide rental assistance and utility disconnection prevention assistance program. This program will help protect low and moderate income families who are most financially vulnerable as a result of COVID-19's effect on local, state, and national economies. Okay. Bring your attention to the PowerPoint. So disaster emergency shelter, here the current emergency shelter is located at the Human Services Building as a shelter during this time. The impact on the outside individual bringing COVID-19 into this facility. These facilities are not primarily shelters, as I mentioned. Our HHS building is used to house Health and Human Services staff in the typical functioning of county government. We repurposed the lobby, the conference room, and training room as a shelter space. If COVID-19 shows up in this building, we would end up having to close the HHSA's building for a period of time until we have that building thoroughly cleaned out or the virus dissipates. So in 2018, we had an event in December where we used the HHS building, and we had over 52 residents there. It was qualified for 52, but we ended up having more residents there. And so with COVID, we're going to have to reduce that number down. So we can only house half that many people there as now, too. So the second problem, as I mentioned, is caused by the reduction in space to the shelter. We're going to reduce it down to 26. And then on our backup location is a gym located at a local high school. So we have the same issue there, is that we are using other buildings purposed for county government or as a school for shelters in this place. The Armory will give us a chance for a standalone building. So this is a picture of the Clyde Armory. So in 1976, Haywood County donated a 5-acre tract at Haywood, near Haywood Community College. It became the home of the 211th Military Police. They had formerly outgrown the Armory. It's right behind this building. And until 2018, it served as home of the 2011th, and they moved over to Hendersonville as part of a decommissioning. This is currently as the layout. You see the drill hall, which is about 5,400 square feet. There's restrooms, office space. And then on the lower part of the building there, it's actually a little bit below grade from the drill hall. That served as an indoor gun range for the Armory at that time, too. This is the drill hall that I mentioned. So the Clyde Armory is a temporary shelter. As I mentioned, Clyde Armory is a standalone building, can house 32 clients, has kitchen, showers, and ADA accessible. Out at HHS building, there's no showers there. We only have restrooms, there's no facilities or showers, anything like that. So as I mentioned, the big problem is that this was an indoor gun range. And so that's where we get to the crux of this grant. The Armory needs to be renovated and upgraded before it can be usable as a shelter, so the primary focus of the first phase of this project, the most important step of this phase, is the treatment of lead contamination currently present in the building. The heating, ventilation, air conditioning, all the HVAC system, and ductwork will need to be replaced due to the lead contamination. The security system will be placed in the building, restrooms and the entrances will be made ADA accessible. The kitchen will be upgraded to a commercial grade, and the facility will also be placed with a generator in case power runs out there. The county also has a licensed general contractor on staff now, and we were able to actually reduce some of the cost here. Have any questions so far? Okay. All right. So this is how the shelter, the drill hall mainly, will look if it's spaced out for social distancing and COVID. We don't need any of the cots, anything like that. We already have that as part of our plan, so we won't have any costs there right now. So the Armory will be used to house anyone in need of a shelter as a result of an emergency event. The shelter will be run by county employees, including nurses from our Health and Human Services Department. We've excluded those items such as dividers, beds, et cetera, from the grant because we already have those materials in stock. We also will partner with American Red Cross to obtain supplies for the current shelter and would like to continue that arrangement in that space. We also have had Red Cross out there to evaluate this space as well. They gave us some recommendations. Those recommendations became part of the grant request as well, too. So what we're going to do with the Armory is make it into a multi-use building. It's been, when we got this in 2018, we were very excited about all the different things that we could do with it, and we've had to take a pause due to the lead contamination. When we first got the building, we were given some documentation that there was no lead there, but on abundance of caution, we went ahead and did a phase 1, and that's when we found it in the HVAC and in the places like that. So we've taken this pause. So what we're going to be doing with the building is classrooms for the drill hall for Haywood Community College, for their basic law enforcement training program, recreation, and multi-use there. The county recreation department doesn't own a gym. We lease out that space for quite a considerable amount of money each year. So this would give a space for recreation to have, for basketball, pickleball, any of those things else that we are trying to run. And also EMS Clyde base as well, too. So if you remember from the report that was given, I guess earlier this year, I don't quite remember, that some of the times in Clyde could be a little bit better. So this would be an opportunity there to have a Clyde base in that vicinity as we have in Waynesville and elsewhere. So sorry about my lack of architectural renderings here, but as you can see the space here. So where the gun range is would be the EMS. That's where they would park the truck, medical supplies there. On the right side, EMS, that would be the housing and a kitchen just for the EMS employees there. And the drill hall will be shared between EMS, Haywood Community College, recreation program, and then the Haywood Community College would use a set of classrooms that up there on the upper right. And then there's a storage supply area over there that the Haywood County Rec and Haywood Community College would share there. There's also a downstairs in this facility as well, but it's not ADA compliant. It's just stairs there and it'd be hard to get people there. And that would take a little bit more work, and it's something we can work through as we have the building a little bit longer. So this is the budget, and we can certainly come back to this. But right now, we're looking at $743,000 in. The county is going to contribute the cost of $35,000 to the EMS base and to the flooring of $40,000 for the multi-purpose flooring that we'll use in the drill hall. Right now, the drill hall is just concrete. This multi-purpose flooring is a plastic composite there. We can certainly come back to that. And Brooke Smith is here with, she's the Assistant Director with Mountain Projects, and I'd like her to come up and explain the second phase of this project.
Good evening. Thank you all for having me. So I work at Mountain Projects, and we are a community action organization. and we serve residents in Haywood and Jackson County. We provide all kinds of different programs, housing assistance through the form of Section 8, Head Start, Senior Center. We do congregate food when it's not COVID. So we just really run the gamut. We like to say that we serve folks from homelessness to home ownership, and we really stand by that. We're a little worried when the CDC eviction moratorium ends at the end of this year that we're going to have lots of folks facing eviction and homelessness. We get about 1,000 phone calls a week on average seeking assistance, and so we would really love the opportunity to be able to say yes and help folks stay in their homes or pay their utility bills so that they're not spending this long winter cold. So that's where we're currently, what we're wanting to do with this. Unfortunately, time hasn't been on our side, and so we don't have exact numbers of how many people, but I sit right across the hall from our central intake team, and they're on the phone from about 7 in the morning until the last one leaves at 6 at night, nonstop, getting requests for folks, from folks for housing and rental and utility assistance.
Anybody have any questions? How much money of the grant would go for that, for the rental assistance? Dave, I was looking at that.
Thank you.
On the mountain projects is $120,000 for families for rent and utilities. Staff time and indirect costs are roughly about $16,000. Okay. One of the things that, when we were discussing this, and I worked with a private company as well too, because we started an eviction process as a legal process. There's landlords are on the back side of this as well too. And so one of the things that we created was this rental assistance pool to help, certainly the person who is going to be evicted, but it saves also the landlord from having to evict somebody and to put somebody out, because it's an expensive process now and a long process as well too. So I think this was a great program. Like I said, we worked with a private company to do this, and then bring it here to this side as well too. I think it's going to be good. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions before?
Yeah. Questions for
Dave? I got a ways to go. Yeah.
You do?
I do. Like I said, I got some I's to dot and T's to cross. There'll be some preachers jealous of me after I get done with this. Okay, the proposed project, description and purpose is implement necessary facility upgrades for the Armory as to function as a temporary emergency shelter. The secondary objective is to support mountain projects and keep people in their homes through rental assistance and utility disconnection prevention assistance program. The purpose of the CDBG CV program is to help units of local government and respond and recover from the health and economic impacts of COVID-19. Supporting families, communities through telehealth support and other public services, protecting the most valuable, vulnerable, and high-risk populations, assisting small business with economic recovery, addressing, testing, tracing, and tracking trends. The state of North Carolina provided approximately $28.5 million in funds received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to support North Carolina's COVID-19 response efforts. The allocation was authorized by the Federal CARES Act of 2020, Public Law 116-136. The maximum grant funds for each of the applications here in North Carolina is $900,000 over a 30-month period. Application for funding will be received on a first-come, first-served basis with a focus on local needs identified by community in collaboration with state and local health officials. The CDBG program is able to fund a wide variety of community development activities. The state of North Carolina has chosen to fund several activities: water, sewer, infrastructure, neighborhood revitalization, COVID-19 related projects and economic development projects that lead to job creation or retention. The CDBG CV program can find a wide range of activities, including but not limited to the following: public service activities, subsistence payments, employment training, testing, diagnosis, equipment, supplies, and materials, food distribution, health services, mental health services, broadband and communication support, services for special needs in populations such as seniors, youth ages 13 to 19, and disabled handicap. Public facilities, acquisition, construction, reconstruction, or installation of public works facilities and site or other improvements. Rehabilitation of building improvements, including interim assistance. Broadband and communication support, economic development activities for small business activities, micro enterprise assistance. Haywood County is seeking an amount of the CDBG CV funds not to exceed $750,000. Haywood County will contribute $75,000 for a match for the Armory upgrades to the facility to serve as an emergency shelter and to support mountain projects with implementing a rental assistance and utility disconnection prevention assistance program. The purpose of the Haywood County's request is to implement necessary facility upgrades for the Armory to function as a temporary emergency shelter. The secondary objective is to support mountain projects and keeping people in their homes through utility disconnection prevention programs. The state of North Carolina requires that if Haywood County receives the CDBG grant funding, Haywood County will certify that it will comply with the requirements of the general displacement and relocation policy of CDBG grant funding. This policy assists low to moderate income people with costs associated with relocation or displacement, such relocation become necessary due to the project activities. CDBG funds can be used for those costs if necessary. No displacement and relocation will occur as a result of the proposed CDBG CV grant activity as outlined. If Haywood County is awarded the CDBG CV grant, Haywood County will be responsible to comply with federal regulations and certify that if funded, that they will conform with all federal state regulations governing the CDBG/CDBG CV programs. On the date of submission, the CDBG CV application will be available for review during normal hours at Haywood County Historic Courthouse, 3rd floor, 215 North Main Street, Waynesville, North Carolina, 28786. Additional information is available from David Francis at 452-6625 or david.francis@haywoodcountync.gov. Should you have any complaints, grievances regarding the subject of the public hearing, they should be addressed to the addressee, that would be me, mentioned above, within 10 business days from today, and a written response and written complaints or grievances will be sent by the county within 10 business days when practicable. We now open the floor for comments about the CDBG program, and you're about to be for the proposed project.
Okay, so you want to open the floor to comments about this grant?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, so this is public hearing is for the CDBG CV program, which is going to help us with the Clyde Armory, basically get rid of the lead that's in the building, and we're couching that as an emergency shelter. Right now, the emergency shelter, in case y'all didn't understand, is at Health and Human Services, which is at the old Walmart, and that's where we have to have an emergency shelter when we have a snowstorm, or in this case, we're doing it in case we have to have or several people for COVID-19 isolation. We can use this facility for that, right? Is that what?
Not in this situation. This is for a natural disaster.
Natural disaster.
Yeah,
okay.
We've tried to house the other COVID folks in individual places,
right.
but we're having to expand. Because if, like I said, in 2018 we had 52 people. We don't have enough folks, or we don't have enough space at Human and Health now.
So they don't have COVID. It's just that they need somewhere to stay in an
emergency for more social distancing.
Okay.
Yeah, and so once this project is done, then Human and Health will no longer be the primary building.
Right.
It will go over to the Armory as the first primary building after that, and then we'll have to work out the secondary building from there.
Okay, so I'll open up the public hearing for any of the public to speak on this grant. I won't go through it all. Okay. You
tell her she can.
Yeah, you'll need to come up here. The reason is because this is televised and the mic will pick you up.
Yes, I need to ask you a question, please. My name is Peggy Hannah. I did not hear, or I wasn't listening. At any time, will this shelter be considered for a low barrier shelter?
He has to come to the mic now. He has to come to the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, ma'am, it will not, because where the Clyde Armory is located is next to the Haywood Community College. Then right below it is also the basic law enforcement training facility. At no time part of the grant application, well, this will be considered that. We wouldn't put that type of shelter next to a community college. Just doesn't make sense. Okay.
I have about 2 more questions. This will house how many people in a crisis?
32.
So that is that's 20 less than what you're able to do at the current facility. With COVID restrictions, right.
After that,
so my question is, basically, are we asking the county to help with securing this building and the funds, basically to make another facility that will house different programs to help the homeless, the downtrodden, or the ones that's being evicted?
is in the presentation that I'm sorry, I thought I was fairly clear about it, is that this building will be used for EMS, for ambulance services, be a house there, be used for recreation programs, basketball, and Haywood Community College will be having classrooms in there as well too. There was no time has there been any discussion about any of the homeless issues that you have mentioned. Okay. And then you also said the county. This grant program is actually with the state of North Carolina.
But it comes through the county.
Yeah, the county administers the funds, correct. But yeah, these funds are not taxpayer funds or anything like that. It's through the HUD. HUD goes to the North Carolina Department of Commerce, and then those funds are available through this program here. Okay. Okay.
Okay, the last question I have is, you can stand here and tell us that at no time, not even in the wildest dreams, that this has ever been discussed as, if you get this now, 2 years down the road, it could be used as a low barrier shelter. That's never come up in discussion. Stand here and say that out loud, please, so we can all hear you. Thank you.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Is there anyone else would like
The
to
first time I ever heard about it was this morning. So
would anyone else like to make a comment on the grant?
I just wanted to clarify, I don't think some of the folks heard that, so that this shelter could be used for 32 people during the COVID to comply with the social distancing, but 60
it'll be over
if
60.
social distancing is removed.
Yeah. So it'll be a bigger shelter than we presently have at the Human and Health Services building we're done.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but I think at the old Walmart, our HHS building, it is 52, or it was 52 in 2018. But with the COVID restrictions, that takes us down to 26.
It's correct. Cut in half.
So the Armory would bring us back up to the 32 mark.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I've just got a couple of questions.
Okay.
The grant's for $900,000, and we're going to do about $120,000 to help people that have been displaced. We still have about $150,000 we could ask for. Is there a cap on that for Mountain Projects, their portion to help people out?
Whatever we're applying for the 120 is all that we're going to be allowed to receive.
So the grant won't allow us to have
The grant was up to 900, but Mountain Projects projected their own budget, and that the 120 we got from them. But the grant's up to 900,000. Our total budget all in 743.
Okay.
So am I connected?
So they're on top of what we're going to do. If you put the two numbers,
they're included in the 743.
okay, and that's what I was wondering, if there was a restriction that kept us. Nothing is free, but if it's free money, and we're only getting 120,000, and I saw where they have countless people calling every day, can we get the max to the 900,000 and give the remaining that we don't need to Mountain Projects?
Yeah, I did not work on that part of the budget. Ms. Smith might be able to answer that question. That's what they thought, we started working on this project, over a month ago, and this was the numbers, that it's not changed. She might be able to address why they were at that number, but...
Hi.
Hi.
So this is the budget that our executive director created. She probably had in mind that we have received $30,000 in some other funds already. And then the governor opened up his program this week for housing assistance, although in the first day it had already gotten over 20,000 applications statewide. But we would never, we would never turn down the opportunity to apply for more if you all are interested and you're willing. We'll do whatever you'd like.
Would we be able to, David? I mean, this is kind of your area, not mine.
We haven't submitted the application yet, so I would think that would be fine. But we advertised that we would not exceed, we could go up to, because we've got 75,000 in. So it's 643, 75. So the 669 is what the CDBG part would be asking. So you'd only, be looking at, another, $70,000. But
So at this point in time, you're only going to ask for the 743 on the document in front of us?
Correct.
And the maximum allowable for this particular grant is 900,000?
Correct, right.
But our project only covers, according to this spreadsheet, it's only going to take 743, and that's what you're going to ask for?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what
Did you have a comment, Brian?
Yeah, David,
Brian?
sometimes this is sort of like you need to have your porridge just right, not too hot or not too cold. Lots of grantors, if you ask for the max, they kind of scrutinize that. So these are some figures that between David and Chris and Will and lots of other folks on the cost of the Armory, we feel confident about, and the numbers provided by Mountain Projects were their tentative budget. So if we increase it to hit the 900,000, it may cause someone to look at the program even more in depth in Raleigh.
Well, this is what you was comfortable with applying for, is what you're saying, that we had data to back up the need for it.
Correct. Our budget was strictly based on, getting estimates for lead abatement, the HVAC work, for the security and alarm system. So we all of ours was based on actual quotes, and we to work on that.
So if we get this, is it going to be open still? I know it goes until they run out of money. So could we get more if we get fortunate enough to get this, turn around and ask? The most they could do at that point would tell us no. So we could apply multiple times?
That would be great if it was. I think there's only 27 million, and it's first come, first served. So we're scrambling to get this applied for. But if the state releases more funds, we'll certainly apply. Keep in mind, all of this originated as CARES funding, and that's from the federal government. And it expires on December 30th, and so I think the state's trying to put it to work as well. So if there's more money, we'll certainly apply.
Well, I'm okay with going with the amount that's asked for now, but it would be nice if, when we get this, if they award it, to turn right around and have something ready to go back to Mountain Projects on their behalf and offer for the other 150,000 that we could use. Got one more question. On page 3, it's talking about the regulations governing the grant, but I didn't see anything in all the information we were given saying there were strings attached. Is there any strings on this grant that's going to come back and get us later?
No, there's always strings attached, and most of those strings are just the common sense strings. You're using the money for what you designated it for. You spent the money for what it was designated for, and you end up with a project that you applied for. Those are the biggest strings, because if you don't do that, the money goes back.
So there's nothing we're going to be required to do that you're aware of that's going to come behind here?
Say that one more time.
There's nothing you know of that's going to be required of the county. It's kind of like unfunded mandates. That happens a lot. And my big concern is we're going to see something that's going to come back flying in here that says, oh, you took our money, now you have to do this. Does this look like this money is free other than doing what's reasonable?
I haven't seen anything else. I mean, it's it's a pretty thick document, and the whole document, but it's just a standard CDBG grant. We sign on the dotted line. This is where we're doing from. We have several reporting requirements along as the project goes along. The money's out there for several years, to get a project done. We hope to have ours done fairly quickly once the funds get here. So that is just, to me, it's if you do what you say you're going to do, it's pretty simple. And that is, and that's how most of these grants have worked before. We got $1 million, for Francis Farm. We did everything we were supposed to do, turned it in, nothing there, nothing wrong. I mean, if you have an instance that you're worried about, or that you can shed some light on, I'll be glad to address it. But just as a global thing about, if you know something in fine print that I'm not aware of, then I'll be glad to look at it.
That's the thing, I haven't seen the fine print. I've seen what we have here, and that's why I was wondering if there was something you saw in there we were going to have to do later.
So on November 2nd, you'll get to see the application. That's what you'll be voting on. Mm-hmm. You'll get to see the final application.
Well, if it's that thick, can I have it early?
Huh? Nobody gets it early.
That just means I got to read it fast, right?
Yeah. Okay. Then I can let you read the fine print then. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Thank you all. Appreciate your patience. Thank you.
We'll make a decision on this at our next meeting.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have the application. We'll post the application when we get it completed, and it'll be voted on at the November 2nd meeting as well. Then. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Okay. Our next, is that good? Okay, and I'll close the public hearing for this grant. Okay. Okay, the next order of business is a regular public comment session, which is, I think, is why some of y'all are here tonight. I would ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Tracy will let you know when your 3 minutes is up. She politely will let you know. If you would just finish your thought, and then if you'd like to use hand sanitizer or the wipes for the microphone, you can do that when you come up. If you would state your name and maybe where you're from, and you can speak for 3 minutes. And if you're here for a group, you can speak up to 5 minutes. So, okay. So our first person to sign up to speak is John or Lynn Phillips. Okay. Welcome, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, thanks for giving us this opportunity. I'm John Phillips. I live with my wife at our house at 153 Hideaway Lane, just up the hill from what used to be called the fairgrounds. It's now the Smoky Mountain Event Center. And I'm here to talk with you about the events we've been having recently. Others will speak with you tonight, I think, about the incredible sound volume or noise or really loud music, however you want to describe it, that's being generated there, that's really tearing up our neighborhoods, which are just above the fairgrounds. If you're familiar with that area, behind Long's Chapel and past the fire department and the feed store. Anyway, others will tell you about that, and I agree with pretty much everything everybody says about how loud it is and how disturbing it is to our actual use of our homes. But I thought it'd be helpful if I spoke with you just a little bit about what's causing the problem. The fairgrounds, the Smoky Valley Event Center, is rented out and used for music presentations multiple times a week now. Somebody in Asheville runs an organization that has acts come in, present their music from a stage. They amplify the music with incredible volume to people who have parked on the fairgrounds in their car to listen to the music. I think it's a COVID kind of thing, car concerts instead of live concerts where you crowd into a venue. But the volume that's being generated is so oppressive that we're here. So I made pictures to show you what's going on. I don't know if you got these. I left them a little earlier today, but these are the pictures. A is a picture from Regina Park. I went down to the fence that is the end of the neighborhood called Regina Park. It butts up to the fairground. I took this picture looking straight down the hill towards 209, and you can see the base of the hill has a huge stage on it, sound stage with speakers and amplifiers aimed right up the hill at Regina Park. There's nothing between the stage and these neighborhoods. Picture B that I took is a little further down from Regina Park into the fairgrounds property and shows you the layout of the stage, marked out spots for cars to park, and then another bank of speakers and amplifiers higher up the hill for people who pay for the cheaper parking places. I think they have to come up the hill further away from the stage, and the amplifiers and speakers are aimed towards them, but also aimed up the mountain towards our neighborhoods. And then the last picture I thought you might like to see is picture C, and it shows a close-up view of the tower of speakers and woofers that are being used to generate this sound. All of us are familiar with speakers. This is like bringing a howitzer artillery piece to a small arms presentation. And you can see from my captions here what I mean by that. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard. I appreciate it very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Phillips. Thank you for coming tonight. Okay, and next person signed up to speak is Janie Grove. Welcome, Ms. Grove.
Hi. Just to give you a background, we live in Regina Park area. My husband and I traveled across the country for 3 years RVing, and we settled and bought a home here, fell in love with Waynesville, and bought a home here a year ago. And we saw the fairgrounds. We were told, not a problem, because we were a little concerned. They've had the fair, they've had other things going on. If you could if you took a look at this big area right there, that's how big those speakers are. They have speakers down by the Highway 209, but they also have these huge speakers that are right up by the building. Our house is right next to a vacant lot, and right next to the vacant lot is the entrance to into the fairgrounds. And it isn't just the noise at night. They start about 3 o'clock in the afternoon practicing, and it's just blaring. They have them pointed right to our neighborhood. And in addition to that, we've noticed a lot of people driving into our neighborhood, parking their car, pacing up and down our road, and walking in from our neighborhood into the fairgrounds or by the fairgrounds into our neighborhood so that they don't have to pay for the music. I don't know who these people are. We've seen them parked around various parts of our driveways and around the road, but I don't feel safe about having them as soon as we go out the door. But the vibration is just unbelievable, and we can't even listen to TV. It's so loud. And it goes on from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 10 o'clock at night. And we didn't move here for that. We don't want to have to sell our house because of that. And, we feel like it's depreciated our house. If people know, if we have to try and sell it, I don't think we're going to get our money out of it after all this sound that's going through. Nobody wants to live in that kind of a neighborhood. So I just deplore you to just maybe try and listen to it, but we don't trust these people that are coming into our neighborhood to listen to it for free, because you can hear it so loud. We can sit on our porch and hear everything, and believe me, it's not the best music that you want to listen to. So anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Okay, our next speaker signed up to speak is Deanne Wilmot. Okay, welcome, Ms. Wilmot.
Hi, I'm Deanne Wilmot. I live at 243 Walnut Ford Road. The music, quote, if you could call it that comes up from the fairgrounds blast us so loud at our house, we can't talk to each other inside the house. If you go on our back deck, we're just over overpowered with the music and the announcing, and we're up above, about a half a mile up above the fairgrounds. Now, since real estate taxes are based on the value of single-family homes, I feel like it's depreciating our homes, and that depreciation's is going to hurt the county coffers. Won't other people have to end up paying to make the difference? And how do we get compensated? There's no way we get compensated for the value of our homes. Realtor.com, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Realtor.com has recently added a layer of inquiry to their description of a property on their website. That inquiry is called Sound, S-O-U-N-D. This is an indication that sound has an impact on the value and the marketing of homes. What should I disclose if I want to sell my property? It's not going to be good. And I ask that you please consider changing the ordinance and different ways that you can do this to modify what is happening to our neighborhoods. And this is a large amount of people. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Wilmot. Okay, our next speaker is Dan Wilmot. Welcome, Mr. Wilmot.
I am Dan Wilmot. I live at 243 Walnut Ford Road with my wife Deanne, who just spoke, and we live just up the hill from the Phillips residence. And I am here because of the caustic noise coming from the concerts at the fairgrounds. This past Saturday night on the 17th, I measured the sound of the finale of the concert on my back deck at 83 decibels. Can you imagine what it was down below us? It's only much, much higher. That's terrible. I don't think any one of you would live or have that in your neighborhood at any time. It's disgusting. My next door neighbor, we found out yesterday as we were canvassing the neighborhood, works at a store many hours and on every day trying to do his job, and he has to be there early. On Saturday night, he tried to go to bed early. Of course, not only was the music loud, there's the light show that comes up the hill. It comes in his window and flashes. How are you supposed to sleep? Impossible. I'm also here because a lease was allowed to be signed and approved, giving Asheville Music the right to drive in concerts. This decision has caused the residents of Tuscola Acres, Regina Park, Foxfire 1 and 2, and areas beyond to have to endure to this ear-splitting, loud music. What can be done? I fear nothing, because the county commission is in contract. You're in a slippery slope. You have a contract and a lease through next August. Now, my request would be that our organization, our people, get a copy of this contract to see if we can have any way to work it out. I also want to ask that the people, secondly, I would request the county commission to staff to draw up a new county ordinance with noise factors where we, the residents, do not have to file a lawsuit to get the noise ordinance enforced. It should be up to the county commissioners, our enforcement agencies to do this. I thank you for listening. I hope that you will take action to reduce the deafening noise of these events. Please remember that we are not complainers, but taxpaying homeowners with a serious problem that we did not cause. Thank you again for listening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilmot.
Thank you all.
Okay, our next speaker, the next person to sign up to speak is Joy Hearn. Is that right? Okay, welcome.
Can I wipe this off? I'm a little short.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Some of these guys are tall. How's that? Okay. My name is Joy Hearn. I live at 42 Fireside Drive in Maggie Valley. I live nowhere near Foxfire. I don't know these people. Did talk to one guy in the driveway, but I decided that after I read the letter and the little article that Vicki wrote, I feel your pain. Folks, the venue changes, the promoter changes, but the complaints never change. I've been in government for a long time. I know that there are people who complain to complain, you just want to blow them off. There are people, particularly in the tax area, who complain because they want to get their assessment lowered into their advantage and take advantage of their neighbors that way. And then there are people who came in who had a legitimate reason to complain. In this situation, I went up there. I can't talk on my porch because when there's a band playing down where we are, you get 60 decibels or above. You can't talk on the phone, and I go outside so my husband doesn't know what I'm doing. Okay, so anyway, I decided to drive up there last Saturday night and listen to this, and I have never in my life heard anything like it. You can control barking dogs if they bark over 10 minutes, but this is a situation where I went right next to Mrs. Sexton's property, and the house, in my opinion, having been in real estate and appraising for a number of years, the house was uninhabitable for that period of time. It was that bad. In fact, I did make a recording. I've been doing this probably for the past 3 years. I've been working with Maggie Valley, and actually they've been very amenable and have been working with me and gathering data and what works and what doesn't work, and that's what I'm working on right now. But let's do this one. That's without, and I gave you a handout, okay, if you look through that, please, about anything above 85 decibels. If you were at the shooting range, your guys would have to have ear protection. Okay, I don't know what it's like down the field. I expect it's probably over about 110 or above. And I have a hearing loss, because I have a twin sister, I have a hearing loss because of accumulation over time. Sound pollution is now the smoke pollution of 20 years ago. It's very serious, particularly with young kids, because it's cumulative over a long period of time. So we have people, I don't know, there could be people here with hearing loss simply because they've been exposed to sound. Mine came primarily from being a music teacher and my last year with a middle school band. Okay, luckily I got out of it. I'm not completely deaf now. I just have some hearing loss, but I have a twin with no hearing loss at all. Assuming it's not old age, okay?
Okay.
So that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything? Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Hearn. Okay, our next person signed up to speak is Linda Sexton. And you have 5 minutes to speak. I guess you're speaking on behalf of a group. So welcome, Ms. Sexton.
Thank you. I'll just clean the mic also. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Linda Sexton, and I live at 81 Corbin Shady Lane in Waynesville, near the fairgrounds. I'm an RN with a bachelor's in nursing. I woke up this morning and I was told, based on science, that my house is uninhabitable. Thank you, Joy. Decibel levels from Saturday's concert read 89 from my cul-de-sac, well over levels that cause hearing damage. Excessive and unnecessary noise endangers the physical and emotional health and welfare of the people, interferes with legitimate business and recreational activity, depresses property values, offends the senses, creates public nuisances, and reduces the quality of life. The Smoky Mountain Event Center is not an appropriate venue for neither the extreme indoor sound systems of particular celebrations we've experienced, or, and especially, the live outdoor concerts of late. A new name for the fairgrounds doesn't make it so. We, the homeowners of Foxfire Estates 1 and 2, Regina Park, and the surrounding communities are requesting the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Directors at the Event Center in two parts: to prohibit such events and not grant special permits or exceptions. The events are in violation of several aspects of the Haywood County Noise Ordinance and serve no economic or business purpose for the county. Second, we petition that the long outdated Haywood County Noise Ordinance, last updated 1995, before that 1987, be revised to parallel counties across North Carolina that are in keeping with their growing communities in order to protect the health and welfare of their residents. Regardless of whether these concerts are a temporary occurrence due to COVID or indications of future event center plans, they are excessive noise pollution, detrimental to the health and repose of the residents of the very county the fairgrounds claims to serve. Most concerts of this nature are either inside soundproof buildings in large arenas or very far away from towns and housing developments. For example, Woodstock. Concerts are for concert goers. In addition, we cannot expect to sell our homes in good conscience or hope to maintain property values so long as the problem remains. Make no mistake, this is a big problem. The disruptions are random, unpredictable, shocking, and without healthy, reasonable limits of any kind. They are representative of a complete disregard for our comfort and well-being. The fairgrounds is nestled amongst the communities that contribute substantially to the tax base of this county. None of these events should be taking precedence or considered lawful at the expense of residents. Car horns and, worse, the use of bullhorns are common practice at these live outdoor concerts. That in of itself should prohibit the events based on even our current noise ordinance. As our elected county commissioners, it is well within your power and responsibility to provide effective regulations that prevent and prohibit excessive, unreasonable, unlawful noise that jeopardizes the physical and emotional health of the citizens. I invite you, all of you commissioners, to come to my home to the next concert. I'm happy to share my video recordings with you at a later date. I will now let others continue to describe how the noise is affecting us by sharing their personal experiences. Thank you for your serious consideration, your attention, and your action, and for all you do for our wonderful county, beautiful Haywood County, North Carolina. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sexton. Okay, our next person to sign up to speak is John Lynn McDermott. Welcome.
I'm John Lynn McDermott. I live 183 Mill Street, downtown. I'm here repeatedly. You guys probably know my face. I'm here tonight to speak to you about sort of the same thing. I sent some photos up that you can look at. Photo number one, you're seeing a bag full of syringes. And there's a certain thing about these syringes in this bag, because you see it's full, and they have been used. There's a certain way you can tell they've been used by a space underneath the orange cap. Okay. Also in this bag were dozens of harm reduction red cards. This was thrown down in front of a business that a friend of mine owns downtown, who had to open that morning and pick this up and throw it away before she could open for her customers, which is a health business. Okay, photo number 2 and 3 was a cleanup day that our group, Saving Haywood, had, and we picked those up in less than 30 minutes at a place near businesses, near people walking on sidewalks, at a place that the people gather and throw these down. Syringe litter is a problem. I wanted to say this, especially with all due respect to you, Mr. Inslee, because I read the article in the paper that you thought that most of it was exaggerated, and I have been called a liar and an exaggerator at town meetings when I spoke about this subject. I am not a liar, and I'm not exaggerating. Syringe litter is a problem in our county, and especially in Waynesville. I took my friend to lunch at Sauce last week, and she has a breathing problem. We sat down on the benches right across from the courthouse, and there were 2 syringes laying right there, and I said, can you believe that? Unbelievable, right there in the open. Okay, I just wanted to tell you also about, Chairman, with all due respect, the NIMBY comment that I read in the paper, that's not what we feel. I know that some people may feel that way. That's not what Saving Haywood is about. That's not what I'm personally about. I have it in my backyard. I have it in my front yard. I have it all around my house. I don't know that you do, but I know some people don't, and I don't blame them because it's horrible. So I just wanted to say that and tell you that it doesn't matter what it looks like when I get up here and say this to others because I speak the truth. And this is something I have to do. Fighters fight and survivors survive. And we need your help. I voted for y'all. I'm your constituent, and we really need you to help us out. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. McDermott. Okay, our next person assigned to speak is Peggy Hanna. Welcome, Peggy.
Hi, my name is Peggy Hanna, and I'm speaking for several people in our group tonight. The first thing I want to say is, as I'm talking, think of this. What about the victims? As we stood here saying the pledge, liberty and justice for all. You know, the ones in West Waynesville have had both of those taken away from us. We do not have the liberty to sit on our porch, have a cookout. We can't put our trash out unless it's 30 minutes before the trash man runs. We have to pick up the drug paraphernalia every day. We cannot walk out the door without being subject to fines. Last week, just so this is not an exaggeration, Waynesville police could give you the copy. We had 2 homeless, assuming they're homeless, fighting. One of them had a machete. We had 4 police cars there for 4 hours. 4 police cars there for over an hour dealing with these 2 subjects. What about the victims in the neighborhood? Because both of the subjects walked. We have no justice. If you all will check, you will see that Haywood County is letting felony charges walk out of that courthouse without a bond. It's not that I don't care about the homeless or the ones that need help, because there's not a one of us that would not do what we can. But we're sick and tired of the criminal element. Get rid of that element, deal with it, and homelessness will be a totally different issue, and we can help them. What about the victims? I do not expect my street and my neighborhood to be Mayberry RFD Main Street, but I sure don't expect it to be Skid Row. The same as I have offered every town board member. Why don't some of y'all come up and sit on my porch one night, drink some tea, sit there 2 hours. I'll guarantee you can count 10, 15 going up and down the road. You might even get to see 4 or 5 fights. At least once a week there'll be one go over on the county property, shoot up. Sometimes the police is called and sometimes they're not. We're becoming immune to being compassionate because there is no relief. We're asking you, as the elected officials, I read in the paper where Mr. Inslee said that the low barrier shelter needed to go somewhere. I agree. And it's not the NIMBY effect. Every time I've come to a meeting, there's all this discussion, and all I've ever done is a Band-Aid put on it. Why don't you board members talk to these churches that's really all about helping? Talk to them one-on-one. Come up with the program. Build a facility where they get mental health. Let's quit putting a Band-Aid on the problem. Let's try to solve it. It's been in this county. We should be able to be getting mental health going. And I hope victims. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hannah. That's all the people I have signed up to speak. Would anyone else like to address the board tonight? Okay. Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment session. Did somebody want to speak?
Somebody raise their hand.
Did you want to speak? Yeah, come on up. I'm sorry I didn't see you. Just state your name and where you're from. Yeah, just come up here. Just make sure you're speaking to the microphone. Welcome.
I'm Brad Reniger. Brad Reniger.
And just talking to the microphone there,
All
Brad.
right.
You can turn it up. Yeah, there you go.
No problem. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm at 21 Eden Lane in Regina Park, and the last thing I want to do is mess up my property values or upset my neighbors. But I do know, I've listened to the concerts. Aside from the bluegrass, I fairly enjoyed it, and I know a lot of my neighbors have been able to sit out in their back porches and listen to it. They've shut down at 10 o'clock. From what I've seen, they've done a good job of keeping everything under control. I think there's probably a good compromise that we can come to if we sit and talk. But I wanted to say, thanks for letting them do that. But again, I think I said this last time I was here, y'all aren't paid enough.
Okay.
Y'all take it easy.
That's okay. Thanks, Brad. What do you want to? Okay, sir, go ahead. Just say your name. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Brian Good, and I'm the owner of Asheville Music Hall. I'm probably the reason why we're all here today. First and foremost, on March 14th was our last day in business in downtown Asheville. That's 219 days ago. I had to close my business. I had to lay off 35 employees that worked for me on a salary basis, and another 25 that were independent contractors that worked lights, sound, not to mention hundreds of musicians that lost their job in downtown Asheville. Just like any entrepreneur, especially in the music industry, I had to pivot. As an entrepreneur, it's my job and to take care of my staff, to make sure that people aren't going homeless, hungry. I would say every single one of my employees went on unemployment, food stamps, and everything else in between. So I had to pivot. In order to do that, I followed basic models that were going around the country of drive-in shows. So we have definitely been working with the Smoky Mountain Event Center and their nonprofit organization because they're in trouble too. So we felt like it was a good partnership to help not only raise money for Smoky Mountain Event Center, who is struggling with not being able to do fairs and events there, but also our business as well. Just so everybody knows, we've been able to employ 50 people for each and every one of these shows. We're bringing in revenue into the county. We're bringing in sales tax into the county. Every single gas station and hotel has called me and thanked me for being full. Restaurants are being full. And I understand that noise is a concern. I hear you loud and clear. I know that I specifically, the last couple shows, have driven around on the perimeter of the property with my decibel reader to make sure that we're not taking advantage of it. So we did have some sheriffs on the property there to help make sure that we are in compliance with the sound ordinance. And we do want to be good stewards to Haywood County. And we really appreciate the opportunity to bring world-class acts to Haywood County, which is then bringing in tourism dollars as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, would anyone else like to address the board? Okay, Chris. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Chris Caldwell. I'm the manager of the Smoky Mountain Event Center. We are hosting those concerts. We are trying to be very diligent in what we do. These concerts are bringing people from many states away. Each of these concerts represent anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 people coming to Haywood County to stay in our motels, eating our restaurants when they're here for these concerts. I've been asked to take decibel readings not only around the property, but I've also been in Foxfire, I've been in Regina Park, I've been in front of every single one of these houses. It hasn't been other people that are sneaking in, it's me that's been in front of their house with my decibel meter, which I have 2 different meters, both of them reading the same. In each and every event when we were there, they were running anywhere sitting in front of their house between 65 and 71 decibels, depending on what song is playing. I made probably 3 trips through during this last concert and read them on multiple occasions. And That's pretty much evident. Probably the worst part in there is a empty lot that does allow sound to come up, and we did take readings there, and they were in the 71, 72 range. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, would anyone else like to address the board? Okay. Seeing no one, I'll close public comment. Okay, we'll move to constituent concerns, and let's see, Brandon, do you have?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Just making some notes here from all the folks that spoke. You know, I feel for you. I do live in a neighborhood where I hear gunshots going off about every day, and go late into the evening. Fortunately, it is shut off at 10 o'clock, but I like shooting my gun as well at times. So I hate that you folks are have to live in the area where you're having to put up this. Hopefully it's only temporary. After the COVID passes, if it ever does, maybe we'll get back to somewhat of a normal. But I do feel for you. I want you to understand that. But at the same time, I think that you'll hear as we all speak, we all live in areas where we have to put up with certain things, and that's just the county that we live in. You know, I heard several of you say that you purchased houses. Some, I believe, was after knowing that the event center was there. I would say that you probably ought to go back to your realtor and check with them and see why they didn't disclose that when you bought your home. I'm not saying all of you did, but I am saying that some of you did, knowing that the fairgrounds was there. So I would pose that question. And then the other thing, I did talk with Mr. Ansley, Chairman Ansley, about this, and I know that we as a board have talked about this several months ago, but what I would like to do is go back and have another conversation about looking at giving our employees some increases, some raises. I know that we mentioned this before COVID hit, Mr. Moorhead, and I spoke to Mr. Ansley, and I know that the other commissioners discussed this, like I said, several months ago. And I think that after we see the report that we're going to get today, I think Wilbur will be giving that report later on, but revenues are coming in strong. I think we're doing really well financially here in the county, and I want to take care of our employees. So I think I would like to propose that we go back and look at possibly giving increases to our employees.
Hey, Kirk, did you have anything?
I just appreciate everyone's comments this evening. I mean, it's a difficult situation. You've got compliance with the noise ordinance as it is written, and certainly we all have to endure certain things. I live in the town of Waynesville, and there's certain things that I have to endure that maybe I don't necessarily want to, but then I choose to live there. I'll take everything into consideration. I would like to say this. I do apologize. There's been some folks that have called me at my office in regards to this, and I haven't been able to return calls about that, mainly because there's been so many sales and the values of homes are going up. So I don't know if I'd worry too much about the values of any home anywhere in Haywood County. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's going up in value. But we'll take this into consideration. I do want to talk to the fairground board about the continued future plans of it. I expect that that once the COVID situation's over, that they'll continue to have those in Asheville. But it has generated some income here for Haywood County, and so and the people here, and also the businesses that have suffered during the COVID. So, it's just a difficult issue, and we'll talk about it further, but I don't think I have any answers for anyone this evening about their complaints. And the other thing is, I think we're continuing to look at the needle issue. It's certainly something that we need to deal with. We've given harm reduction a little time this last time, but I think we've had some discussions independently between ourselves, not outside. I mean, the 3-person rule or 2-person rule, and certainly that's becoming an issue. Some of that issue is Waynesville, the town of Waynesville's issue as well. And so I hope that you're expressing your concerns to the folks in the town of Waynesville and to the police department also. And they may express theirs back about some ways that some of these issues can be resolved. Unfortunately, the homeless situation is a situation that almost every town is having to deal with. It's not just our town, and these cities are really having to deal with it. If you've been to any city, of course we haven't. None of us have been to too many cities the last 6-7 months, but prior to that, I've been to San Diego, and there were folks laying everywhere. So we don't deal with that, but we certainly don't want to have a future of that as well. But those would just be the comments in regards to the constituent concerns I've heard. And somebody had a constituent concern this week, and I cannot remember it to save my life. So I'll try to bring that up next time.
Okay. Thanks, Kirk. Mark, you got anything?
Kind of in a difficult situation. I live in Bethel, and I understand what you're up against with the music. I'm very much for people doing with their property what they choose to do. Gentleman built some storage buildings across from my house, and I wasn't too pleased about it. But I have to adhere to that myself. Fortunately for me, they're quiet. I wish there was a solution. I would love to be able to sit here and say I figured out exactly how to fix the problem. The Smoky Mountain Event Center is no different than an individual. They have the opportunity to do with their property as long as they abide by the noise ordinance. Being a business, it's not pleasing to some people. I have Crestview Baptist Church across from me, and I love gospel music, but I'm sure at the decibels with what you're talking about, that would probably get to me eventually. I have thought greatly about what you would be willing to tolerate. The only thing I can think of that might solve some of this problem, because it's more than just this event, it's some other sporadic events that happen that cause you people difficulty. I've never been up on your development to look and see what the view is, but if there was a way to construct a wall that would deflect, but I'm not real sure you're going to like that solution, because it is also going to cause some difficulty for you and for your properties. Do we still have any kind of an engineer or anything that works for the county, Brian?
We don't have a contractor, an engineer on contract that I think specializes in sonic area, but we could certainly talk with McGill. He does a lot of engineering work for us to see if they could recommend someone.
Well, since we don't have one, I know you folks are kind of organized and you're looking at options. Maybe that's something that you could do, is look for someone that could give an opinion on a solution. I had an EMS director one time, and I never went to him without a problem. And I would tell him that I had a solution to the problem, and he became offended about it every time I would go to him and say that. And one day I asked him, I said, "Why are you offended?" And he said, "You're trying to tell me how to do my job." And I said, "No, I'm not. I just don't see a point in bringing you a problem without a solution." So I would ask all of you, while you're having your discussions, reach out to people. See if someone can come up with a solution. I know the walls going down Interstate 40 at exit 44 are sound barriers to try to alleviate some of that to the residents out there. If you go to the large cities in Greensboro, places like that, that's why DOT put those walls up, is to keep the noise from being so bad. Help us find a solution. I hear your problem. I've just tried to come up with a solution since I first heard about it. You've been heard, and I would never say don't ever come back and tell us about it. Come as often as you need to. Come as often and tell us, because we need to hear what's going on. But try to find a solution and come to us and tell us. Tommy sits on that board, and I'm sure he would welcome, if you have a solution, he would welcome it. It may not work. It may not be the solution that is chosen. But I believe since this is our property, we lease it, we have no control over it, but we do maintain it. So there's a good possibility we can help you folks. But right now, I'm just at a loss on how to do that. Thank you.
Hey, Tommy, do you have anything?
Well, I get the honor of going last. Everybody's already stole all the stole all the goodie, but I do appreciate everybody coming to speak. I'll try to go down the list here. I've had constituent concerns about all three of the topics that were spoken about tonight. First of all, I'll start with broadband. That's a continual issue that we as commissioners deal with here in our county, and it is incumbent upon us to try to help that. So I was very encouraged to hear Viasat. I had studied those folks a couple of years ago. It is an up-and-coming technology that may solve a whole lot of problems. The hardwire telephone pole cable situation is extremely expensive, as we all know. So if they can do a wireless link, it can probably solve a lot of our problems here in the mountainous terrain. But I will say, as a representative for our county on the NCACC, I submitted a legislative goal last week to the NCACC to present to our legislators in Raleigh. And I'm encouraging them with this legislative goal to further fund broadband expansion to underserved and counties that are not served in rural North Carolina, with an emphasis on our mountainous counties. Because of the terrain we have here, it is extremely costly, and so I did send a legislative goal to our legislators. We will go through the NCACC, North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, to encourage our legislators to continue to provide funding. As it's been said many times, for many of you that don't know, our tier structure in our county prohibits us from being able to apply for a lot of federal grants. I noticed Madison County, our neighbor, they're a poorer county, and they're more susceptible to receive federal grants. They got several $1 million recently, and then I saw where they got another 1.2 for expansion, and I'm like, wow, you know, I wish that was us. But somehow, some way, we got lumped into the same category as Buncombe County and Mecklenburg County, Forsyth, and some of our richer counties, and we're just not there as Haywood County. We're just not there. But we get shortchanged because of that. And I know Bryant's expressed frustrations before about applying for grants. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place on that, and hopefully we could work toward getting that changed also. The other issue that came up, the noise issues, everyone has spoken to. I do sit on that board. I'm on that board with 6 other people, and just like the commissioner board, I've got 1 vote. And I do commend our manager for doing a good job. We have had very huge struggles, just as Mr. Good spoke with Asheville Music Hall. Our world changed in March. And it costs a little over $3,000 just to keep that thing solvent, whether we have any performances or not down there, any events. And so what was lost in all the conversation was the emphasis being put on this COVID-19 situation. I still am longing for the day when this thing's gone. You know, it's disrupted a lot of lives. And this, I'm sure Mr. Good would love to be using his facility in downtown Asheville, but because of the governor's orders, these outdoor concerts and events have become the COVID way. And, you know, folks, we have to go through things in life sometimes that are uncomfortable. Some things are temporary. We just have to ride through them. But we'll see how all that goes, but I do appreciate everybody coming. I've heard other commissioners say that this is a raw form of government where you can actually come and address your elected officials here. And you've taken advantage of that opportunity to exercise your free speech and show us your concerns. And as you heard, not everybody that lives there is totally against it. I know gentlemen spoke for it. Others in the community have had good words to say. And it's kind of like the old euphemism where beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. You know, I went down. I have been, for you folks that live down there, I've been down there maybe on 2 separate occasions. I was there Saturday night. We drove around with a Dawson meter and checked some levels. And, you know, I wanted to be on site firsthand because I am on that board. I am taking complaints and constituent concerns, and I do I want to remind you that we do, as some of the other commissioners spoke, we represent all people in Haywood County, as some of you had pointed out. And there's 62,000 people from White Oak to Fines Creek, to Lake Logan, to Asheville Highway, and sometimes when we tweak an ordinance, you might specify one little small group, but it's going to affect a lot of other people in maybe sometimes negative ways. So we have to be real careful with that. And I'd like for our county manager, Brian, if you would, to examine Maggie's situation with the lady that spoke and see exactly where we stand with that. They have a lot more performances than the Smoky Mountain Event Center. So again, thank you for coming on that, and I think we can move forward with and see if we can find some solutions. The third thing on the needle trash, and I noticed one speaker who spoke about victims. What about the victims? What about the victims? We know that is a good point. You know, we put all our emphasis sometimes on people who are perpetrators, and we talk about perpetrators, but what about the victims in this case with the needles? And, you know, we're closely examining that. But I would encourage, if anybody from the town of Waynesville is listening, we have a highly faluted homeless task force. That so far, after several months, I haven't really seen a lot of substantial things come from that. So I know you folks pay county taxes. We do represent you as county taxpayers, as we do, as I mentioned before. People in White Oak, Fines Creek, Crabtree, Iron Duff, Lake Logan, Cecil, Ivy Hill, Suttontown, Beantown, Newfound, all these areas, we represent all the folks. And, you know, I really believe the town of Waynesville maybe should step up a little bit more and help you folks. You pay town taxes. And so I think the chain of command maybe should start in the town hall and try to get some resolution. But as far as the needles go, my opinion, I don't know what these other guys think. Again, I'm just one of five. But, you know, we can do harm reduction without the needle exchange. We can do that. As a matter of fact, 17 counties in North Carolina do that already. They do the jailhouse mitigation, try to get with folks in the jail. They try to get with folks in the emergency room who have overdosed. And these are concerns that we all share. And certainly we want to try to help people, but we want to consider everybody. And so those were the things I had, Mr. Chairman. And I'm like Commissioner Kirkpatrick. I had one other one. I was sitting here trying to think of it, and maybe it'll come to me again, maybe the next meeting. So thank you.
Thanks, Tommy. Okay, I'll just make a couple of comments on the, as far as the noise goes. I understand. I live within eye level of the interstate, so I understand noise. We have it 24/7 with the interstate. And unfortunately, my neighbor, well, fortunately, I guess you could say my neighbor is the coach for the shooting club at Waynesville Middle School, and they used to shoot every Saturday, and I guess COVID's kind of slowed them down. So it's been kind of quiet on Saturday, but they start shooting at 8:30 and they go till about 2 o'clock. And then sometimes they shoot on Sunday. And when it first started, my wife was like, what are they doing up there? And I told her, I said, well, they're training young people how to use firearms, and it helps them understand the Second Amendment. So I think when I explained it to my wife that this was, even though we've got a little bit of noise on Saturdays, that it helps the community, she was okay with it. So I understand the noise. I have driven around the neighborhood when the concerts were going on, because when I started getting complaints, I wanted to know. So I have driven around the neighborhood, and I understand what y'all are saying. And as far as the town of Waynesville, the task force, Tommy, we're working. The task force, I'm on the homeless task force. It got put off because of COVID for a little while. Then we started meeting Zoom. I was trying to think when we started meeting. I think we started meeting in July, finally. We were supposed to start in March, and we didn't start till July. So we've only been meeting those since July. And some of it has been Zoom, and some of it we're starting to have in person. And I wasn't at the last meeting, and there were some rumors got out about the county. And I'll just say we had we have committees, and I'm on the eviction and homeless committee that has to do with evictions and rents. And so we were trying to find ideas for this winter when it's very cold where we can have people stay on the real cold nights. And we talked about the Armory. We talked about the jail annex for that. But those, and then unfortunately, I was going to ask Brian about that. So that was on Wednesday. We met on Thursday. I wasn't there because I had a conflict. And then Friday, I asked Brian about those issues. And by then, I guess with Facebook, and as y'all know, I don't like Facebook. I call it Fakebook because the rumors get out. And, you know, it was like, I can't believe it spread like this. So all it was we were kicking around ideas, Brian, and that wasn't going to work. So we know that neither one of those places are going to work. And hopefully we can come up with a solution. Maybe some churches will step forward to have a solution for we call it Code Purple whenever, and Brandon Wilson is with the Veterans Affairs with ABCCM. He's on that committee also. We're just trying to kick around ideas to find space for just for this winter, and winter's almost here. We've had some nights near freezing tonight. But I do understand the problems, and I do have a business in Frog Level. That's where my business is. So, and I understand people, they walk by, hear them talking, and, you know, and everything. So, and I've had some run-ins with them, and I understand that. You know, my mom taught me the compassion of Christ, and I try to look at that as Christ would look at it, and try to help these people in any way we can. And so I guess I'm a little bit more phlegmatic, if you will, and kind of going along with some of these folks to try to help them to get out of that, because I know there's a mental health issue, and our state and federal government is not helping us out with mental health funds right now, because nobody would want to live and sleep under a bridge or outside when it's really cold and everything. So we know there's mental health issues, and I think Mark's talked about trying to help with that when he gets to the state, if he gets down there, to try to help with funding on that, because if we the mental health, as that funding has gone down, the homelessness issue has gone up, and it's gone up nationwide. We hear about it all over, and even in the county we have homeless issues, even in the rural areas. I mean, I'm talking about, well, I know up Little East Fork where my mom and dad lives, they got a homeless guy up there. My guys was doing a survey in Dutch Cove the other day. They ran across a homeless camp, so it's everywhere. And I don't know why that's happening, other than I think our mental health funding is really cut down. So hopefully we can get the mental health funding back up to the levels it needs to be, and can help folks with the homelessness, because I really believe that those go hand in hand. So that's my comments on that. And I just want to move, and I do want to say about what Brandon was talking about, the raises for employees. Brandon and I were talking about that, and our numbers are really looking good as far as our sales taxes come in very strong. And I know, Bryant, you really budgeted low for the sales tax, and it's really coming in above, a good amount above that level. And I know I don't want to take Will's thunder away from him. He's about to come up. So we'll move on to our administrative agency reports and presentations, and we'll have a COVID update from our public health director, Patrick Johnson, and our medical director, Dr. Mark Jabin. And if Mr. Good with the Asheville Music Hall, would you mind hanging around and talking to our folks before you leave, or do you need to go? I have 3 boys at home waiting for dinner. Okay, well, all right, never mind. Okay. 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 Yeah, if they could touch base with you. I know we were on a call the other day, and they were wanting to talk with you. And okay. All right, thank you. Okay. Welcome, Patrick. Sorry you took this long to get up here.
That's okay.
But we all got to hear some good comments.
Thanks. Can I get started? Thank you for having us. I'll just go ahead and get started, okay?
Okay. Yeah, they can hear you on the TV, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Jabin and I are going to give an update of what's going on in Haywood County related to COVID. Just a few a little bit of case information, just for your information. One of our cases was positive for COVID, flu, and strep. We did have a bit of a situation with a birthday party. 15 people were there with no masks and no social distancing. One person showed up. They were not sick at all. It was pre-symptomatic. They became sick the following day. Now it says 5 people became cases. We've had 6 more people from that party became sick. Contact tracing is still going on, although the good news is we've had no further cases and no secondary cases from that party. But the positivity rate from that get-together is 46%, which is extremely high. The thing we have to keep in mind is just because you know somebody doesn't mean they're not positive, and that's what happened in this case. Case number 637 is a gentleman who worked out of county, who said his boss refuses to wear a mask anywhere and exposed people at his work. This gentleman became positive, and last week, as of Friday, he was in the hospital. The good news, though, is that Dr. Jabin pointed this out to us. Last week, Haywood County's rolling case average was 3.2 a day. That was really good. It's been a little bit higher for us, but not so bad lately. Over the weekend, we only had 7 cases. That's good. We do keep track of how many people are in isolation and quarantine. That's the isolation, the positive cases, and quarantine, the people who have been exposed. Last Monday, that number was 85. Today, it was 134, a 46% increase. We know that's going up mainly because of the number of people in quarantine, not necessarily the number of cases. Our cases have really not been that extremely high, about 3-4 cases a day, which is pretty darn good. We're happy with that. But what's happened is more of the cases are exposing more people. Like today we've had 1 case, and it seems like about 10, 15 people have been exposed. That was tying us up quite a bit. The other thing that we wanted to talk about was COVID-19 vaccine and influenza vaccine. We did submit our enrollment form for COVID-19 vaccine, and this week we have a meeting with key partners to talk about just the logistics with how we're going to be giving vaccine in the priority groups, just to get that discussion started. Dr. Jabin has a few more things to talk about with COVID vaccine. We just want to make sure people know COVID vaccine will not be mandatory, just to put that out there so everybody knows that. And the other thing is that COVID vaccine is for adults. That's the only thing that has been studied. This is not going to be a pediatric vaccine. Related to flu vaccine, our current supply with the health department is very low. We just have 55 doses of high dose, that's for 65 and over, and then about 70 doses of other vaccine, and some of that is for free that we get for the state for children who have no insurance. But next week we have 520 doses total coming, 150 for seniors 65 and over, and we do have a drive-through flu shot clinic. We wanted to have it this week, but we don't have enough flu vaccine. It is going to be on Tuesday, October 27. It is at the fairgrounds, and it is for drive-through. It's for adults only. It is for people with insurance. We are going to get flu vaccine for people without insurance. We're not sure when that's going to arrive. That has been promised to every county in the state. We expect that sometime in November, and when we get that, we will make sure that's available to folks who have no way to get a flu shot. I think that's all I have, Dr. Jabin.
We all take a deep breath. I want to share a couple things about what's going on around the country as it affects Haywood County. and also want to talk some about, just elaborate a little bit on what Patrick was saying about our recent cases. And then also I want to give a bit of update about what's happening with vaccine development as people are trying to follow that. This is the United States as of last week. And you'll notice that in the center of, well, what you should know is that red is the highest rates, highest risk areas. Orange is high, yellow is low, green is really good. You'll notice that there is no green. You will notice also that the middle of the country is very red. This is not a political statement, by the way. This is a COVID statement. And that is where things are happening. If you look at North Carolina, again, this is the rolling average of daily new cases. And as you see in the top left corner, less than 6 is really where we want to be. Less than 1 is ideal. And you can see this was last week. Haywood County was 4.8. We had come off the 3.2 when we were the lowest rate in the county. As of today, we're around 9. That's a tripling from that time. And we're the 9th lowest in the state. There are some other things. Well, let me back up just a second. Well, let me go here first. So you can see our neighbors. You can see their rates there. Again, less than 6 is where you want to be. You can see North Carolina and our surrounding states. And I would point you particularly to Tennessee, which is almost all in the red. And so as people travel around in the upcoming holidays, I would encourage you to go to this site, globalepidemics.org. You can look at any county in the country and see what's going on in that county. Does that mean you shouldn't go visit family there? No, of course go visit family there. But if you're going to a place that's in the red, you might want to be extra special careful while you're there. You'll also notice East Tennessee, Northeastern South Carolina, and some other common places that we tend to go to. Just be aware. Let's see. Let me back up a second. I want to also point out, if you focus just on western North Carolina for just a moment, as of today, the counties west of us, Jackson, Swain, Graham, and Clay are all red areas now. They're red zone areas. You can see to our east, Buncombe, Henderson are orange areas. So we're doing really well relative to others, but of course there's a lot of cross-pollination that goes from one place to another. So hopefully we can sort of keep it there. I think we're a little concerned about what we've been seeing this last week, especially with that COVID number and the number of people quarantined. And it just speaks, I think, to that there are a lot of people who are sort of letting their guard down a bit. And that's why we're seeing all these folks in quarantine. Now, this week, there was a man in North Dakota that was interviewed. He was going into a store. And what he told, and he was in one of the worst hot spots in North Dakota. What you should know is that we're at 4.8, 5, 6, 7, 8. North Dakota today was 89, to give you a snapshot of what's going on in some of these places. This guy goes into a store, he brushes off a sign telling the customers to wear a mask, and his comment to the interviewer was, make sure I get this right, if they kick me out, I'll go somewhere else, calling masks about as effective as blocking the virus as stopping sand with chicken wire. Quote, I just don't take BS from people, I rely on my own common sense. And I guess I'm a little unclear about what common sense means to people in North Dakota, but I think I understand what common sense means to people here in Haywood County. And I think it looks like this. If you're going fishing and it's a rocky bank and it's the middle of the summer, I think you're going to be aware that there's snakes around. You're not just going to crawl on top of them. If you have a child, you're walking down the road, and that child wants to walk in the road, you're probably going to do something to protect that child because there's cars possibly coming. You don't want to walk into a risky situation. If you grow tomatoes in your garden, I'll bet you know about tomato blight. It's coming unless you do something about it. And if you are never in a car wreck, does it even matter if you wear a seatbelt? But you wear one anyway because you can't tell when it's going to happen. And if we look at the paper mill, there's a lot of dangerous places at the paper mill. Those people are trained and practiced, and there's protocols to help them be as safe as they can be in that situation. So I'm wondering, why doesn't common sense with coronavirus also mean be aware, avoid risky situations, stay ahead of it, because you can't know when it's going to happen. Now, I thought for entertainment's sake, we need a little demonstration. If you've done any sort of investigation into accidents, or you know anybody who's done investigations into adverse events, you're probably familiar with the Swiss cheese model, right? Swiss cheese has holes in it. right? And in accident, what is found over and over, that it's only when the holes line up that the event happens. It takes a lot of events that have to come together, and as you can see, the holes, you can see the light. If the holes don't line up, how much light do you see? That's what we're talking about here. It only takes a contagious person in their pre-symptomatic phase where they don't have any symptoms, so they can't know they're infected, with other people around not protecting themselves, not using masks, not distancing, not washing hands, for the holes to line up. Can we put that up for you, Vicki? Yes. For the holes to line up.
Hey, you got any light bread and some ham to go with that?
And when the holes line up, you get sick. The holes don't line up, you're perfectly good. There's only one thing our friend in North Dakota kind of missed on here. If the virus traveled through the air all by itself, he'd be absolutely correct. It's so small it would pass right through a mask material. But he misses something, which is that it doesn't. The virus travels in a glob of snot. It's not a grain of sand that has to stop, that the mask has to stop. If this is the mask, this is the chicken wire. I'm sorry, I don't have any chicken wire. It's not the chicken wire that has to stop a grain of sand. It's more like it's got to stop a tennis ball. That's why a mask works. You know, farmers are successful because they know what they're talking about. And common sense leads them to pay attention to their fields, something they can control. And the weather, something they can't control. And if they get it wrong, it's their crops that tell them so. But if that farmer is misinformed or chooses to be misinformed, when they don't pay attention, when they ignore, dismiss, or overlook, that common sense doesn't serve them so well. Their crops will set them straight. And for each of us, it's the virus that will set us straight. So there are those of us among us who are doing our best to be careful every day. And your community thanks you. There are those of us who do so most of the time, but sometimes not. And thank you to you as well. But if the holes line up just right for you, you're going to pay the price. And there are those of us, like our friend in North Dakota, who rely on their brand of common sense, a brand that may not be serving them or everyone else around them as they want to believe it does. What we're seeing this last week or two in Haywood County is more people being exposed because they're letting their guard down, more people coming in contact with the holes that line up. And the more that happens, the more we have community spread, the more likely it is to happen. So I also just want to take a minute, update on vaccine development. And this is not about what your views on vaccines are. This is the views about what's happening. There are 6 different candidates being studied. The expectation is that none of them can be produced in enough quantity to serve everyone. So the hope is that several of these will work. 2 are in what's called phase 3. That's the last part of the trial. Phase 3 requires somewhere between 30 and 60,000 participants. The data from the first 2 of these 6 may be available towards the end of November. But then it needs several months of observation for adverse reactions. So we're still several months away at the best. The other of the 6 are not as far along. They're slated to have data available in January and then again in March. So when you see a study paused for whatever reason, you should be happy because that's actually good. It represents a focus on safety. Now, no one doing vaccine development expects the vaccine to be a magic bullet. Nobody expects it to be like an on-off switch. We have this vaccine, this whole issue goes away. Doesn't work like that, unfortunately. I wish that it did. The vaccine is obviously a very important piece of the solution, but it is only a piece of that solution. And here's something really important that I want you to be aware of, and this is coming from all the vaccine developers. Because enough of us in our country have not been doing what we need to do to tamp down the incidence of this virus, they're very concerned because they saw the vaccine as the last step in a chain of control. But we have no chain of control, and they see the vaccine as the last step. If we don't get this right, we're toast. And so the people doing vaccine development want to go really slow and want to be very careful because we have to get this right. People have to have confidence in this. We have to demonstrate the safety. And it's going to take some extra time, but that's where we're at. And you may have seen in the past couple of weeks announcements about some steps towards that safety. The FDA is requiring at least 2 months of follow-up data to detect adverse reactions. The manufacturers have all agreed that none of them are going to seek emergency use authorization until that data is available. And you also may have noticed that there was an independent panel that has been appointed. These are people that have no connection to industry to review the results. The other thing is that vaccines are being manufactured right now. The companies, even though they don't know if it works, are manufacturing it so that if and when one works and is safe, it can be deployed rapidly. But also be aware that the first doses are going to go to those most vulnerable, which is those in long-term care facilities and healthcare workers. That's somewhere going to be around the first 60 to 90 million doses. So by the time it's going to be available to those of us in the general population, spring or summer is a more reasonable expectation. So what does this mean for us in Haywood County? Until this vaccine is here, the public health measures remain critical. The 3 W's, COVID ID, and the golden rule of gathering. The reason that this is so important is that the lower we can keep the case numbers, the more effective the vaccine will be. But even after we have a vaccine, these public health measures are not going away. They're going to be with us for a while because they're essential to controlling the virus. And I want to make a particular mention about the COVID ID, right? If you get symptoms, if you get sick, it's really imperative that you isolate yourself, get tested, and remain isolated until at least your test results come back. We've had cases this week where people did not do that, and they're out and about exposing others. If you're asked to quarantine because you're a close contact, please honor the quarantine. We've had cases this last week where people did not do that, turned out to be positive, exposed a ton of people. This is why we're seeing that COVID number go up. So I really want to impress on people, those of you watching as well, to really honor that. How do you not get caught up in the web of isolation and quarantine? It's pretty simple. Avoid being a close contact with anybody. Avoid anybody being a close contact with you. Avoid being within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, not wearing a mask. If you do those things, then even if someone around you turns out to be positive, you don't have to get caught up in the web of all that. So please exercise the common sense each of you has. And with cold weather, we're going indoors. With holidays, families will be getting together, traveling, going other places, with more and more events around. You know, none of these actually pose a threat. But what you choose to do or not do is what causes the threat. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to entertain any questions along with Patrick.
Anybody have any questions for Dr. Jabin or Patrick?
I was just wondering, Dr. Jabin, how many companies have tests? Are they several tests on the market with varying degrees of reliability, or do you know how many is out there?
Yes. If you go to the FDA site, they have a list of all the companies who have each of the 2 kinds of tests, right? There's a PCR test that has been the standard all along, and there's the antigen test, which is the new rapid test. If you go to that list, there are probably 30 or 40 companies with PCR tests. There are probably 24 companies with antigen tests, although I'm only aware that 3 have actually been given emergency use authorization by the FDA. That's a whole other discussion about the testing. There are enough tests for people to get tested. You have to be a little bit careful about what kind of test. And let me just say this, you have to ask, am I getting a PCR? Am I getting an antigen? If you're getting an antigen test, it is only reliable for someone in the first 5 days of their symptoms. Let me say that again. It's only reliable if it's positive in someone who is in the first 5 days of their symptoms. A negative test is not to be relied on. A negative antigen test is not to be relied on. It's in the company's literature, it's in the FDA. So if you go somewhere and they want to do a rapid test, and you ask them and they say it's an antigen test and your test comes back negative, you don't know any more than you knew when you walked in the door. That's got to be confirmed then with a PCR. And you would need to be quarantined until that result comes back. So the testing thing, unfortunately, is confusing. But that is the most important thing to know about the rapid tests. But to answer your question, there are lots of companies with tests. There is availability around. There's not a problem with people getting a test.
Any other questions? Do something, Mark.
Go ahead. I just got a comment. I believe that Mr. Patrick is probably counting down the days. I think he's just going to be here through the end of the month. This is probably his last commissioner meeting, if I understand correctly. And me sitting on the HHS board, I'd just like to say thank you for your service. We appreciate all you've done and all you've done for Haywood County.
Thank you. And Garen Bradish is going to be taking over, very capable. He will be very capable. He's been with us 20-plus years, and I feel very confident in his abilities. He's going to be a great interim. So thank you very much.
Do you have a question, Mark?
I'm curious about, and you hear this on the radio all the time, you've got options, the vaccine, herd immunity. I know there's a few more months in it since we had the last discussion in May. What does that look like, the herd immunity? Is it going to be a real thing, or is it kind of like the cold? You catch it multiple times.
So first of all, you may have seen in the last couple of weeks there was a documented case of a reinfection in the United States. There have been maybe a dozen documented reinfections in the world, meaning people who got infected one time apparently got well and it contracts it again. You know, we're 6, maybe 8 months into this. We don't know how long immunity lasts after a person is infected. If that immunity lasts 6 or 8 months, we're going to start seeing a lot more reinfections. Are these just sort of one-off things? We don't know yet enough to know. In terms of herd immunity, when you think of herd immunity, you're thinking of many, many, many more deaths than what we're dealing with. And that's the only way around it with herd immunity. You know, Sweden is held out as an example of a place that didn't lock down. Well, I'm sorry to tell you that Sweden did lock down quite a bit, not as much as other countries. They closed their bars and restaurants. They limited access. They limited large groups. They left kids in school. They actually had a lockdown for anybody elderly, but the younger people, they left them to do what they wanted to do. They ended up having a death rate 10 times Norway, Finland, and their neighbors. And they had to drop back and say, ooh, maybe we don't do this. We've already had close to 220,000 deaths in this country. If we were to rely on herd immunity, that number would be astronomically more. So despite what you read, despite what you see, herd immunity is, if you can live with that, then herd immunity is an okay strategy. You can live with the death. In terms of the vaccine, again, the vaccine is a critical piece to the puzzle. It's only one piece to the puzzle. We can produce all the vaccine that we want, but if people don't use it, it hasn't done us any good. So we have an obligation in the medical community to make sure that people can have confidence in this. There's a large percentage of people in our country who don't believe in vaccines. And this, I'm not going to debate that with anybody. People are entitled to their views. But the vaccine will work only when enough people take the vaccine to create the level of herd immunity that can get us out from under this. So I think we have that obligation. Does that answer your question, Mark?
It does.
Okay.
It does. Now, if we had done this with the common cold, the hand washing, the staying away from each other and the wearing masks, before this all happened, a lot of illnesses would be non-existent for practical purposes. This is very low. If we rely on herd immunity, who are we going to lose? A lot of people sit and they say, let's just get it over with. Who are we going to lose if we go that way?
So if you look at the percentages from early on, roughly 80% of people who get COVID will recover, and it tends to be the younger people. 20% of people end up in the hospital. 5% of those people end up in the ICU, and probably somewhere between 2 and 4%, depending on your country, will die. The piece of this that has not been well recognized until recently are what are called the long haulers. These are the people, mostly between 20 and 45 or 50, who get presumably a mild case, who then have symptoms that go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's a variety of symptoms. Some are neurologic. For many, it's profound fatigue, shortness of breath. And we're also noticing that people are having heart issues. Their heart function is not good afterwards, and it persists for a long time. So that's another category that we need to be careful about. It's not just I get it, I get over with, and just a few of those old people are going to get sick and a few of them are going to die. There are a large swath of people in the middle who are having prolonged symptoms. We don't yet know enough to know why that is or what's causing that, but it appears to be real. So for people who say, let me just get it and get over with, it's like Clint Eastwood, how lucky do you feel, punk? Have you been counting the chambers right? So that's the breakdown of things, and that's what makes this so difficult, because you just don't know how you're going to be. You don't know how your immune system's going to respond. Doesn't matter if you're healthy or anything else, you're going to find out only if you get there. So that's the problem with opening this thing up and just saying, let's get over with.
Do you have any idea how many people were testing a week? How many were testing a week?
A week?
I see the numbers that come through every so often. I see those, and I try to post them.
Yep.
But do we know how many people are actually receiving a test on average each week?
In Haywood County?
Mm-hmm.
That's updated every Wednesday. That's coming from the state data.
Mm-hmm.
So the state gets reporting directly from the labs. So there is some testing going on that's not getting reported, but it's a very small amount.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that number is absolutely perfect, but it's certainly in the ballpark of what you're seeing. If you look at Haywood County, we have been positive test rate somewhere between 3.5% and 4% now for several weeks. The state was like at 7 or 8%. It went down to almost 5%. It's bounced back up to about 7%. If you look at a place like, I hate to pick on North Dakota, but if you look at a place like North Dakota, it's like 20 or 25%, just to give some perspective on that.
So it's still relatively low.
For us, yes. And again, the important number with positivity is 5%. So below 5%, you're pretty happy with that. Above 5%, not so much.
What's it going to look like when it turns cold? Now that everybody's starting to go back in, what do you think is going to happen?
I think that, it's, I'll bring back my stove and pot, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to turn up the heat, the water's going to start to boil. Turning up the heat is a matter of more contact. More contact, closer contact, you're going to turn up the heat, the water's going to start to boil. When we've worked with the school system and the community college and any other group that we've worked with, what the framework that we lay out there is, you're probably not going to avoid having infections in your group. It's going to be there. The question is, can we limit those so it doesn't spread beyond that? The way to do that is avoid being a close contact, avoid being anybody in close contact with you. And that way, if you come in contact with somebody who's positive, you're not going to have to quarantine, expose your chance of getting infected really low. So as we come inside, if you think about Thanksgiving and people want to be together Thanksgiving, how are you going to manage that and avoid people being in close contact? Well, within 6 feet for 15 minutes unmasked. Right? So everybody's got to think about how they want to adapt what they do to not be a close contact. That is the framework the strategy that seems to be the best strategy trying to do this. I think, Mark, we're already seeing with schools, more schools in places where people are going to restaurants and bars, and now, of course, with phase 3, all that's open, which is fine. If people equate that opening with just not having to do these public health measures, it's not going to be good. If people equate this opening with, hey, I just need to be careful, avoid being in close contact, we can manage this. We can get through this. There are a lot of people in a lot of places that have done a really good job of figuring out how to manage their interactions with others and manage their lives in a way that maybe it's not ideal. It certainly wasn't the way that it was, but it's manageable. And I applaud the people and the businesses who do that. We need more people to do that.
One last thing, sure. The party that you had 15 people at, of those, 5 of them have gotten infected.
7? 6.
6 of them have gotten infected. Do you know what the ratio was, children to adults?
In that group of 15? One child.
So they had a birthday party, there was one child there, and then all these others were adults?
It was an adult birthday party.
Right.
Yeah.
All those others were adults?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not bad. 30% of them roughly? Got
30
it?
to 40%.
Okay.
Right. So 46%.
Okay.
So it's really interesting. There was a study out 2 weeks ago that looked at 2,000 close contacts of 440 positive people. And they followed the close contacts to see how many would get infected. So how many do you think got infected of those 2,000? What percentage? What would you say? 3.4%. Right? I could put next to that another study, which is more representative of what, this hot tub party, where it's 40 to 50%. I'd hold up the Swiss cheese and shoot the light through there. You just don't know. And that is one of the huge challenges of trying to help people get their minds around this whole issue. Thank you. I really appreciate the time. Burgers and Swiss cheese at my house later. So.
Yeah.
I wanted to.
Not that cheese.
I wanted to make a comment that that our low number, I think, is from y'all's hard work, and I appreciate it, and the staff. I know that they've really been working hard, and then us to be in, I guess that was in the yellow instead of the red. Haywood County looked pretty good on that map just then. So, and I know that's from y'all's hard work. And then, Patrick, I do want to say that the county's blessed to have you here during this pandemic. You and Dr. Javen have been a good team, and I'm glad you were here and that you stuck with us. I know you wanted to leave a little earlier, but you stayed on, and I really appreciate all your hard work. And I feel like that Haywood County was blessed to have you here during that time, and I really appreciate all your work. And I know Garen will do a good job, and I have total confidence in him too. And I appreciate you, having him in the wings to help that transition and everything. But I wish you the best in your retirement. Okay.
Kevin, really kind of you to say that. I just want to add on that the folks down at the health department who are doing this work every day, hats off to them, and to Patrick as well. Patrick has been a great partner in this. Has been a huge help to me, trying to be a help to everybody. But I want to point out that our low rate is because of what people in this community are doing.
That's
the
true.
example that you guys are setting, the example that is being set by all the agencies, emergency management, government, town governments, hospital, everybody, the example that's being set. Because what's happening in so many places is everybody's getting this mixed message. You don't know what to believe. And we've been very consistent in doing that. And I think that's been a large part. And I think the community deserves a huge amount of credit. Just let's get more of the community behind it.
Yeah, you're right, because I do notice when I go in, people are wearing the masks and doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I know you're right. You're exactly right.
Yep.
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate you. Service.
Okay, our next order of business, or the next item under agency reports. We need to take a short break.
Yeah.
We do? Okay.
5-minute recess.
Yes. Okay.
He lives on South Lake Shore, right? South Lake.
Okay. I'm going to call the order of the meeting again. Okay. Okay, our next item of the agency reports is Meridian Behavioral Health Update, and we have the Meridian Behavioral Health CEO and Medical Director, Dr. Don Buckner. Welcome, Don. I appreciate you hanging in there with us.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. It's always my pleasure to get in front of folks and talk about treatment services for some of these problems that we've been hearing about. So I think this is certainly pertinent to some of the things we've talked about in the meeting. Bryant had called asking about some of our opioid treatment services and some services we provide via Zoom. So I thought it'd be nice to talk a bit about that and how we're adapting to some of the COVID issues, certainly. So just a quick summary of what Meridian is and what we do. So we provide services in the 9 western counties of North Carolina, essentially Transylvania, Buncombe West. We have our services were essentially formed out of the privatization of the public mental health system that started back in 2002. Smoky Mountain Center, you may remember, was the name of the organization prior to the formation of Meridian. And we've continued to provide a spectrum of services. We have providers that include psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, licensed professional counselors, and peer support specialists that we employ. We do a spectrum of outpatient services for children and adults, and shouldn't be a line through that. It says we provide services regardless of payer. So we can, if someone has no insurance, we're able to provide services to them. We get some support from the state to do that. So we can see folks with any type of insurance too. We're enrolled in all of the panels. We do behavioral health services and substance use services. And we provide recovery-oriented, resiliency-focused services. And those things are what we're proud of. When we say recovery-oriented, we partner with folks to understand what their goals are. You don't come into Meridian and we tell you what you need to do, because you're going to walk right out the door and probably not come back. We want to hear what's on your mind, what's important to you, and help tailor the treatment around that. And then as far as resiliency-focused services, this is a concept that comes from understanding the brain's response to trauma. And trauma is a pervasive thing in our society, not just in Haywood County. A lot of the folks we see have some history of trauma. It may be relationship trauma. The trauma may be their parents' separation and divorce when they were a child. So when we go through traumas, our brains are stressed, and our brains don't function normally. And so as people go through life after a trauma, that brain dysfunction continues. So what we have services to do is help people learn how to kind of calm their brain down, so to speak, learn some skills, some resources that help them manage stress so that they can function better in life. Their relationships can be more stable. Their depression is easier to manage. Their anxiety is easier to manage. So their brain is more resilient, able to handle the things that come along normally in life better based on those experiences. So for children, we treat things including ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorders, behavioral disorders. We do basic outpatient assessments and therapy. We have psychiatric services for medication treatment needs, and we provide intensive in-home services for at-risk children. At risk meaning risk of placement outside the home, need for a higher level of care. So it's a service that we're able to do. We go literally into homes and provide the services in the community if they're needed. Adults, we have services for treatment of mood disorders such as depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, and substance use disorders, including opiate use disorder, alcohol, methamphetamine. Those are certainly the most common ones in our area. We do basic outpatient assessment and treatment services. We have psychiatric services, and we have a service called ACT, or Assertive Community Treatment Team, and this is it's an intensive outpatient service for patients with high needs. It's a team of 10 to 12 people that include a psychiatrist, nurses, and therapists, substance abuse counselor, employment specialist, who essentially can provide whatever that person needs in the community. We go to the homes. I do home visits for folks that are on the ACT team and find out what is helpful. There's been some barrier for these folks that have made it hard for them to get care. It may be transportation to the office. It may be they're just not organized enough to know how to make it to the office. So we bring the office to them, essentially. And then substance use services. And these include medication-assisted treatment, or MAT services, and that's Suboxone is what we use for opiate addiction. We have medicines that can also be used to help with alcohol use disorders. And then we have an intensive outpatient program for substance use disorders. And just a bit about this, that intensive outpatient program is a program that meets 3 days a week, and the meetings are between an hour and a half and 3 hours. And we have 2 of those groups each of those 3 days of the week. And these are folks that are often early in recovery. They may be referred after discharge from a hospital. They may have recently had an overdose. And so it's just a step down from residential treatment for folks. And normally you would be coming to the office for this service 3 days a week, but because of COVID, we have been given the flexibility to do this via video. And it was interesting to think about doing that by video and whether we'd be able to engage the individuals that really needed the treatment. And what we have found is it actually has enhanced the ability for us to engage and maintain people in treatment. It's broken down some barriers of transportation for folks. And we have been really pleased with that. And there's some great success stories coming out of this program. Just a few that the person that directs that program had mentioned to me is there's a recent graduate that has become the general manager of a store here in Haywood County. There's another graduate that became an acting manager at a local business. And there's a current participant in the program that's been able to get a small business license in the last few months to open up a business. So these are our neighbors oftentimes in these programs, and you wouldn't necessarily know they were struggling. And hopefully through this treatment, we're able to help them overcome their addiction so they can get back home to their family, back to their job, whatever they need to be doing that the addiction has gotten in the way of. COVID. So we made a decision early in March that we needed to shift to virtual meetings. It was just not safe to be in the office, and we didn't want people to have to come to the office to risk exposure. So we've been given flexibilities in the health system by most of the insurance companies that allow us to do virtual meetings. And so we can do a Zoom or FaceTime session with somebody directly into their home or in their car. They may have gone out to their car at lunch from work, so we're able to kind of meet them where they are. So And in general, it's been well received. Again, it's breaking down a barrier. Transportation for some people was an issue. And people like the safety of being able to stay at home if they're worried about getting out and exposure to the virus. So we are still doing some face-to-face services, though. Our ACT teams, our community team, we still do a fair number of those visits face-to-face when needed, following the appropriate precautions. Our intensive in-home team serving the children are also doing some face-to-face work when needed. And then at each of our 4 main office locations, one of those here in Haywood County, we contract to do walk-in services with the state. That means we can take care of anyone who needs help on a walk-in basis. They just walk in our door Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, and you'll get an assessment and treatment recommendations. So most folks have been able to make the shift. Some don't have the technology. We've been able to get some free smartphones for our folks to use through a grant with Via Health, and we've had staff donate some phones, some tablets for use. So we have been able to meet some needs in those situations too. But sometimes the data we were talking about yesterday, sometimes the people don't have internet capabilities where they live. So we're able to do phone services with folks too, in the event they don't have that connection. And wanted to give you a big thank you, literally, for allowing us to use the buildings on East Street and Broadview Avenue. And we've been doing services in those buildings for years. When I first started working for Smoky Mountain Center in 1999, I saw children in the building at East Street, the old nurses' dorm for the hospital. So it was exciting to get back into that building after several years where Via was using it. So really appreciate that. And in our PSR program that operates in the Broadview building, we've had to suspend that temporarily because of COVID, but we're hoping to get that going pretty soon. And our ACT team uses the upstairs in that room. So those buildings are absolutely being put to good use these days. So that's just my brief overview, and I'd certainly be willing to entertain any questions that any of you have.
Anybody have any questions for Dr. Buckner? Go ahead, Mark.
You kept saying all these people that were getting treatment, you go to their home, you provide them with phones, some of them are children, some of them are adults, and you're talking about the success stories of them getting jobs. But I didn't hear you mention anything about the ones that we keep hearing the most about, the homeless population. Do you have a way that you're currently interacting with them where these services that are available, they're going to be able to use?
So that's a great question. So we come into, I guess, contact with the homeless in different ways. Sometimes it may be after a hospitalization for a mental health condition or a substance use condition and may be referred to our services, and we're able to provide services to them, either face-to-face or via tele if they have that capability. So we have folks that work at Meridian that are housing experts, you could call them. What they do is they help link folks to available resources to help them with their housing struggles. Many folks that have schizophrenia that are homeless have just never applied for disability, and by helping them get started down that path, we're able to ensure that they would have an income if they qualify for disability and therefore can qualify for some housing. I guess the challenge with the homeless, though, is they have to have some level of motivation for service. We can't, force people into treatment. Treatment is voluntary unless there's an involuntary commitment that's been issued for someone that's been hospitalized with some concern about dangerousness. So we try to tailor our services so that people are comfortable coming to services. One of the things we do is we employ peer support specialists, and these are individuals that have gone through their own recovery. Many of them have histories of substance use, and they've gone through a recovery program. Sometimes that program may have been at Meridian. So they can look someone in the eye and says, I've been where you are, and here's what I found helpful. So that's been one of the ways we've tried to reduce some of the barriers to care. With more money, we could probably do more. So funding, has been an issue as well. But if someone does have a substance use disorder or a behavioral health disorder and they're homeless, we absolutely will do what we can to help them access services to help them get back on the path to finding a place to stay. We work with the Pathways Center, linking folks to services there sometimes. So those are some of the things we do.
I'm guessing that you probably don't have very many, if any, of them that are actually using your services. People go to Burger King because they want to buy a hamburger, and this is along the same concept. The homeless people may know you exist, but they may not understand that you can help them. What do we do to get them to understand that you're available? That's been my biggest problem all along, is figuring out how to get them to where they are. Leaving them on the street's not going to solve the problem. Keeping them addicted is not going to solve the problem, but every time I try to figure out a solution to get them to where the help is, it doesn't seem that that connection is made. What do you think we could do as a board, for lack of a better way of putting it, to drive them to you so that when they are ready for help, they can get it? What do we need to do?
That's a great question. What we've tried to do is make sure that when folks do have some sort of encounter with law enforcement or with the hospital, with other agencies out there, that they know how to refer to us and how to access services through us. We have a program, the LEAD program, where we work with the Waynesville Police Department with individuals who are facing some legal matter, and substance use is part of the problem, and we're able to help them access MAT services and hopefully keep them from being in jail. So making sure that our law enforcement, making sure that our emergency services have that information is certainly one thing that you could do, and we've endeavored to do that as well, but there's probably, that's an ongoing effort, certainly. As far as other things, I know that for Haywood County, mental health and substance use has been at the top of their health priority list for several years. So I think just making sure that continues, and any supports that become available through grants, through other pathways can help make additional services available. But you're right, for some of these people, it's a choice to be homeless, and it's a choice for the substance use. So it's not easy many times to find that motivation. One of the things that we educate our staff on is what are the different levels of motivation for treatment for folks. And for someone that's pre-contemplated, where they're not even thinking about treatment, part of it is just educating them at some point, if they do want help, that we're there to help them. So we just want to make sure that message, continues to be out there.
So it comes back to the same point. We've got to have somebody that's going to go to where they are. We've got to have somebody that's going to go into the house below Arby's when somebody has overdosed and make contact with that person and get them to you. Because just when they go to the hospital, they may get a referral to come to you, but you wait on them to come through the door to see you. You don't go try to find them. We need somebody to find them to get them to you. You can provide the service, but our breakdown right now is we don't have anybody finding them and bringing them to you. You have to rely on them to be in a position to where they want to come to you first. So is that a fair assessment of where we are?
Well, yeah. I think there are some efforts made. Let's say that person goes to the emergency room. They may get a referral to Meridian. And if we get that referral information and there's a contact phone number, we're going to reach out to them, at least by phone, and let them know that we're there and we're going to offer appointments. But it's, again, they need some level of motivation. Absolutely. All we can do is let them know and remind them of, whatever happened, maybe that overdose attempt, and let them know that if they want to do something to help prevent that, we're open, we're there to hopefully meet their needs. But that is a big issue, is how can we better engage people in the care. That's certainly not a problem just in Haywood County. That's across the nation.
It is, but we're funding a grant for harm reduction to bring people to treatment. And that's my big thing, is if we're not getting them to you, how can you treat them? We've got the people that are supposed to be getting them to treatment. I just don't see it. And that's what I wanted to find out from you, was if the breakdown is getting them to you, there's no point in duplicating the service we already have. We need to concentrate on connecting them with you so the people who want help can get it. Not everybody's going to want help, but I think we are failing as a county and as a city because we're not getting them to you. And that's what I wanted to find out.
Yeah, the services are there, so finding some ways to get people to us. And there's another organization here in the county, Appalachian Community Services, that also provides substance use services. So the services are available. And
what's the name of the other one?
Appalachian Community Services.
Okay.
So
I hadn't heard of those yet, but okay.
They have an office as well. Right.
Their treatment facility, their counseling.
Outpatient treatment facility, right. They can do some of these services. They don't have all the same services we have, but they do have some. Because some people maybe, for whatever reason, they want to come to Meridian, but there's another option in town. So that's the message there.
Does anybody else have questions? I was wondering, do y'all do needle exchange programs within your organization?
We don't operate it ourselves. We partner with another organization that does that.
Okay. So that's a service that y'all could provide if we needed it.
We can link individuals to that, yes.
Right. Okay. So your funding, where does your funding come from that pays for your facility or your staff? Is it insurance? Is it, would you be helped with Medicaid expansion? Is it private pay? How do people pay for that?
That's a good question. Probably 80% of our funding comes from either Medicaid or directly from the state. And that funding's to provide care to folks that don't have any insurance.
Right.
And then the rest of our funding does come from a variety of, some of it may be Medicare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or other third-party payers, and then grants. More and more we're applying for grants and trying to fill in some gaps because, Medicaid won't pay for certain things that people need. So sometimes we need grants to do it. A good example of that is services in the jail. And, one of the things that has been one of my interests is how can we better link folks when they're when they leave jail to services, how to get them an assessment while they're in jail, and ideally, how could we initiate some of these treatments while they're still in jail? Unfortunately, sometimes they may get our phone number at Meridian and directions of how to get to the office. So we've really tried to partner with the jails, not just in Haywood, but in the other counties, to find ways to help reduce that. Because we know that for those inmates, their overdose risk is the highest when they walk out of that jail if they've been there long enough to have detoxed from their opiates. So that's an aside, but that's another one of my passions.
That's a good point. I mean, you have a captive audience if you're in jail, and if you can't get to see them, that's the best time to talk to them.
Yeah,
because that's when they're reflecting on what they did wrong, probably, and want to make a change, and want to come out of there, doing better. I could see that, how that would really be helpful.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay.
I was talking to Ira earlier. Meridian recently was awarded an opioid planning grant that maybe hopefully could complement what y'all are doing. And again, trying to figure out how to better make services available for folks and decrease some of those barriers to care that have been there in the past. So that's why we want to pull together some folks to just help us find out how we can solve some of these problems.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate your patience. Okay, our next administrative agency report is our county quarterly update. We have our management analyst, Will Scarborough, here tonight. Welcome, Will.
Hey, thank you for having me. So we're going to be going through the Haywood County Quarterly Report, and basically what it's going to consist of is economic indicators and performance measures within the county. So the first one I think we need to look at to provide some context to what's going on right now economically is the United States GDP, or gross domestic product. And as you can tell, we've had two pretty serious contractions during the last 2 quarters of the year, from January to March 2020 and April to June 2020. And the National Bureau of Economic Research has actually determined that we are in a recession, and that's basically who we look to when determining whether or not we're in a recession or not. So as you can see, North Carolina has basically followed the same trend. We're slightly better off, but still not very great. And really how that's been reflected in Haywood County is our unemployment rate. As you can see, there was a major spike in April and May when really COVID started to really ramp up, and it's jumped all the way to 14.7 and 14.8% of our people that are workable being unemployed. Unfortunately, it's dropped some, but it was previously, before this, averaging 3 to 4% unemployment in Haywood County, and we're still sitting at 6.7% unemployment. One thing we should also look at is occupancy tax collection. So that's basically showing who's staying in Haywood County, the amount of people. So when people stay, we collect some occupancy tax. And also, if you have any questions, just feel free to interrupt me. But between the January and March of 2019 and April to June 2019, it jumped up 93% from the first quarter to the second quarter. And then this time, it's only jumped up 28%, which is comparatively to roughly $210,000 of a difference to only $60,000 of a difference. So not as many people were staying in April and May and June, which would be kind of expected because of COVID, but definitely made an impact on our occupancy tax. So one thing that was kind of unexpected was we expected for our sales tax to kind of follow those trends of basically being under what it should have been from the previous year. And really what we're looking at in this graph is the local option sales tax. And we really only had 2 months, which were March and April, that were under the previous year. And then as you can see in May, June, and July, it basically overachieved at a rate that basically no one expected within just the budgeting community and economically. And then in June and July, we actually had our two highest sales tax returns that we've ever had. So it was definitely unexpected, but definitely great news for the county. So that's the local option sales tax as a whole. And then if we break it down into Article 19 sales tax, that's basically point of sales tax where when something's bought, we get a portion and it's 1% of that. So that also follows that trend of being much higher than we had expected. It only went under last year's in April, but in May, June, and July, it went up 14% more than the previous year in May, 17% in June, and then 13% in July. So all of those are coming in really strong. The next thing worth looking at is real property transactions through the Register of Deeds. And if you look at May, we were down 24% from the previous year, but since then we've basically gone up, and that basically means that a lot of people are recording within the Register of Deeds. And if we look at excise tax, we see that dip also, and then the exponential growth. And basically what that means is that there's real estate transfer tax that we're collecting. So it's showing that we're having a lot of real estate turning over. And to show that it's not just a bunch of really high value real estate pieces being turned over, I pulled the excise transactions, and it shows that there are also just a lot of transactions happening, which means it's not just a few high dollar pieces of real estate, but actually just a lot of transactions happening. So that's really our economic data. If you guys have questions about that, I can take those, but if not, I'll continue.
The unemployment, do you know what group of people are still unemployed? I mean, is there a certain section of people affected now by unemployment?
So I don't have that in front of me. I can probably look. It's from the NC Department of Commerce. I'm not sure if they actually break it down on the county level. They might have it at the state level, but I can look and see and get it to you if you want it.
Yeah, I'd just be interested to see, is it still, restaurant people, restaurant folks, or hotel or motel, what is it that's, and I mean, I know it's not construction because you can't find people to work. I mean, I'd like to know who is still not employed in Haywood County or can't get their jobs back. What's shut down?
Okay, well, I can look and see if they got that.
Thank you.
When COVID hit, you're talking about the unemployment, I think I was talking to some contractors, and they actually kind of pulled back a little bit when COVID hit, and I'm not sure why, because they had work, but they weren't sure, so they kind of, stayed home and kind of stayed safe at that time. And then I think they decided that they needed to get back into the swing, and they did. And I've kind of wondered if the unemployment during that time, even though it was probably, restaurant driven and those type jobs, hotels, if maybe it was just people bracing for something that really never happened, and they just kind of, I think now they've just kind of gone back to work, and to try to get back to normal, if you will. I really believe that, and I think we'll probably continue to see the unemployment rate go down myself, but that's just my opinion. But I kind of, in talking with some contractors, I heard them talking about that.
Yeah.
Well, I know one thing. This is exactly what I'm seeing, and I have never seen anything like it in 25 years of practicing law, what's going on in our county right now. I mean, in the real property transactions and the number, and this excise tax, 2 years ago it was 66.4, and this year it's 137.1 for September. I mean, that's just
more than
amazing.
double. More than double.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Yeah, I know. Sherry, you collect that, don't you? The excise tax. Don't you collect that? Yeah. Sherry Rogers is back there, so I was just asking her because her and I have had conversations about that, how high how much the excise tax is coming in, And that's the 2%, right, that we get off of real estate sales, I believe.
$2 per thousand.
$2 per thousand, yeah. And we get $1, and the state gets the other dollar, I believe, right? Is that right, Will? Is it?
I think so, but I'm not completely sure. So, yeah, I can find out.
I would presume that a lot of these transactions are from people not originally from Haywood County. Am I correct? And I mean, they're moving here from other places.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A lot of different places too.
Yeah.
Yeah, really from all over. I talked to a fellow from California who was moving here. He said his wife's going to retire in a year, and they're coming. They've already bought a lot, and they're planning on building a house. And he said there was a lot of people following me to our area, actually.
I saw where Boeing's leaving completely out of Washington State, moving everything to South Carolina.
Yeah.
Out of Seattle.
I can believe it.
So next, we're going to talk about performance measures, and this is basically internal data from our different departments. The first one we're going to talk about is building inspections, and basically some context to it is that building inspections happen regardless of whether or not when COVID happened we still had to perform these. So I tried to pick some measures that wouldn't have necessarily been impacted directly where we would have just stopped offering that service. So building inspections went down 7% from January to March, and then 18% in April to June, but then they're back basically to normal levels now. So that's definitely something that you will see in a few of these is our services are starting to come back more into demand, whereas before like external factors were causing it to depress. So now we're looking at child protective services. It went down 23% in the January to March, and then down 29% in April to June, but it's back up 2% in July to September, and that's the calls. And then if you look at the calls accepted, we were down 27%, and then down in the first quarter, and then down 20% in the second quarter, and then up 17% in the July to September quarter. And basically, it wasn't exactly apples to apples, because when you look at that, you're like, oh, we're getting, like, why are we doing so many less calls? But then I went across and cross-referenced the percentages of essentially calls to investigations, and we are basically on par, if not doing better than what we were doing last year. So call per investigation. So it's really, we're just getting less calls. And then you also see that in adult protective services. It's the same kind of thing where we were basically even in January and March, and then dropped a lot during the April and to June. And then we're still a little lower, but when you look across the percentages again, we're still doing it at a higher rate, investigating at a higher rate than our call volume. So it's really, it has a lot to do with our call volume and how many people we're actually hearing from. So the next one is environmental health, which is well permits and septic permits. So both of these is the same kind of deal where if people aren't building, you don't need them. So we see a big decrease, but if nothing's happening, then of course you're gonna not have that occurring where people are gonna have to have those things. But then you can see that it's back up, especially for well permits. It's up 43% from the previous year, so it's rebounding. So next is emergency medical services, or EMS. It's the same kind of deal where it really comes down to just call volume and what we're getting. And we didn't have, other than the April to June, we did have a drop, but at some level, people are still gonna need these services. So especially in the routine calls, and then where we are now, we're looking at basically a very similar number. It's not enough where I think that you could say that there's a huge drop in demand. It was just people were calling less often. So next we have the sheriff, and it's kind of the same thing that we're talking about with EMS. People are still gonna need the sheriff, so they're still gonna have, they're still gonna call, and that's why you see really in the first 2 months, or the first 2 quarters, we're up 11% and then 2%, but then we dropped 20. That's really just comes down to call volume and who's calling the police. So then we look at arrests. I actually was curious about this number because you wouldn't think that you just arrest less people. So I was like, why is this happening? So when I talked to Chief Haynes, basically what they're doing in the court system right now is they're issuing citations in lieu of arrest. So instead of arresting them, they're essentially giving them citations. So even though that number looks like we've dropped a lot, we're actually still performing those sort of things just like our deputies are, but they're just giving a different type of, essentially the way we track the data, it doesn't show up the same way, but those same kinds of things are happening. It's just a different way. So there's not really that drop in what we're doing. It's just the drop in what we're classifying it as. And then you can kind of see in this one also. So with our arrestees, this really has to do with who we're arresting and putting in jail, but also all of the other agencies within Haywood County who also use our jail. So when we see our drop in arrests, if everyone else was still doing the same thing, this would be much higher and it would be a pretty low, but it shows that everyone else within the county is also doing the citations in lieu of arrests. So that's what that's saying. And then this one is animal services, and it kind of also reflects during the beginning of COVID, especially in April and May, and how it has to do with adoptions. Our adoptions dropped because really people weren't going out. We weren't really open to the public. But now that we're opening back up, we have a huge jump in it back to basically normal levels. So those are the indicators. So to move from that into positions and our currently unfilled positions, we have 26 currently unfilled, but it's a mix between vacant positions, which are basically people who have just left and we haven't started the process, posted positions, who are people who have left and we're actively looking for a replacement. We have positions that are being held before posting, which are basically positions that we could post and look for someone to fill that position, but we're choosing not to at this point in time. And then we have positions in the process of being hired. So they've gone past the posted and we found our candidate and are looking to hire. And really this is important because as we looked at the performance measures, we're still doing a lot, but for some departments and like some activities, services that we provide, they aren't necessarily as in need as you could see specifically in the building permits. If people aren't building, you don't necessarily need to fill that. Or if people aren't making calls, then you wouldn't necessarily need to fill that immediately. But now that things are ramping up, we're starting to fill these positions again. So this is the CPI. This is kind of the first step of essentially figuring out what the change in price for consumer goods is. So as you can see, we kind of sit at, let's just say 2.15 from 2018, 19, and 20. And the way I categorized this was fiscal year, because that's what really matters for us when we're budgeting. And then it drops to 1.31. And the main reason for that is because there's a huge drop in both energy and travel expenses. So the everyday expenses essentially of like buying groceries hasn't really changed. It's still going up at that same percentage, but those two major industries have kind of caused it to drop. So when we look at our CPI versus our COLA, which is our cost of living adjustment that we have here at the county, over those fiscal years from 2018, 2019, 2020, and then our most recent budget, we've put in 4% of COLA, but the net difference is, but the CPI in total has gone up 7.83%. So the net difference is 3.83 that is the gap between where we were and where the CPI was. So next is lap salary. This is basically the salary that we've saved from not filling those positions. So the budget is what we had anticipated budgeting because we had planned on filling all those positions and what we expected for it to be. And then the actual is what we're actually having at each, for the first period, it's per pay period rather than per month because it's easier to essentially tracked that way. So pretty much per pay period, we're saving $60,000 per. And then over the 7 pay periods, we actually just had another one on Friday, but at that point that it's 7, we had saved $424,000 of lapsed salary at the county. And the main driver of that is, again, just not filling those positions. So some takeaways from this presentation: the county should be cautiously optimistic. Our local sales tax is strong and much higher than expected. After we had expected the 20% drop or so when we first budgeted, so that's really great and something we should be optimistic about. And we should also be optimistic about the fact that unemployment's dropping in Haywood County, but we need to be aware that it's still higher than pre-COVID levels, and we're still looking to see what will really happen in the winter if we do have another spike. It's important to note that those could go back up, even though we're definitely hopeful that they don't. And then it's also important to note that lapsed salary from holding positions is saved roughly $60,000 a month. And that number will, it's great that we've been able to do that, but that number will go down as we fill positions as service demand comes back up. So the other takeaways from the employee workloads is that services are really having the demand that they did previous to the reduction as a result of COVID. So that's good. After the workloads had dropped from March to May. But it's also worth noting that during that period, employees were reassigned to other tasks. So it's not like we just had employees that weren't doing stuff. One example that comes to mind is the library staff that we reallocated to the call center. So basically, we didn't not fill positions not to fill them. It was basically, if we had people, we were trying to use them. And then if we didn't need them, we would just wait to hire them until we did. So next steps, what we're going to do at the management level is continue to monitor federal, state, and local economy to kind of get an idea of what's going on. And then we're going to continue to evaluate filling vacant positions. As we need them, we'll fill them. And then we're going to continue monitoring revenues stemming from tax collections. So we're going to continue projecting that, and hopefully it continues coming in strong, but we also want to be realistic as things emerge, because it is a really fluid time. We want to be able to react to that and plan for it. And then we also want to expand on our data-driven decision-making so that we can provide data for you guys to make policy and then drive our decision-making internally. So, yeah, if you guys have any questions.
You may have any questions for Will? It was a good presentation, Will. Will covered everything.
I don't have any questions, but when you were talking about the inspections and permits, that reminded me of my constituent concern, which is we're having complaints about folks not being able to get the permits, not being able to get inspections, and I know that's because of, the significant amount of construction that's going on. And of course, we didn't have as many people, and I don't know if we're filling those positions, but I know that was a concern, and I haven't checked it out to see or ask you about it, but I did remember that. So if you could, if we could look into that and see what's going on. We got a lot of building going on, and we certainly don't want people waiting. They don't have to be waiting. And as far as the focus on the economy, our local economy is different than, I think we need to really monitor that because it's different than the state and federal. Mm-hmm. I think our state's probably doing all right, but then locally, I don't know. It's almost like if you didn't know the rest of the world was going through COVID and an economic recession, you wouldn't know what was happening here.
I agree with that, at least in my quarters. You probably too, don't you, Brandon? Anybody have any other questions?
The only thing I observed on that was septic tank permits kind of run along the lines of, new building and things of that nature. But I have heard a few contractors complaining recently about the really high cost of building materials. For some reason, they've skyrocketed lately. So guess the cost of building a house has gone up exponentially also because of that. So
I think a lot of that's because plants aren't working. And plants are not making materials because they're, I guess when people go to work at plants, it's, they get COVID and, stuff. So
yeah,
I think that slowed down for a while, and that probably drove some of it.
Hopefully that's just a little temporary thing
Yeah,
also.
I hope so. Yeah. Any other questions for Will? Do you have anything, Brian?
You had mentioned under
Yes,
constituent
that's
concerns.
what I was getting ready to ask you about.
So I think Will's presentation showed that over the last few years, we're about 3.82% under the cumulative total of cost of living. If it pleases the board, we'll work up some numbers and bring something back at the November 2nd meeting, some options on how to do something for our employees. I think the big consideration in the budget was unknown. We didn't know where sales tax was going to be. Property tax is still a little early, but you have to believe that it's not going to be as bad as we had estimated. So we'll bring back to the board something at the second meeting and maybe look at doing a mid-year adjustment that first full pay period in January.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Well, I did want to add to that statement. I wasn't trying to say that they weren't doing, the building inspections wasn't doing their job. I'm just saying we may need to hire more people in that area.
I'll get with Chris tomorrow because if they came in at one time and we can't get to them timely, people are probably waiting. We've been pretty good through the last 2 years I've been here that we get next day service, and we'd like to keep that up, but we may have slipped because of the number of cases coming, or number of inspections called for. We'll have some data for that at the next meeting too.
Okay. Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. Okay, I don't have any discussion or adjustment to agenda. Seems weird I'm asking that this late. Do you have
I
something?
wanted to see if we could have another administrative agency report added tonight.
I would say no. Okay, I'll move on to our consent agenda. And does anyone, okay, I usually used to read all this, and I know I don't have to anymore. Does anybody have any questions on the consent agenda? Any questions or comments?
I was just wondering, is that fireworks display? I see Mr. Messer, he sat back there the whole meeting. That's a little unusual, isn't it, for the lake to do a fireworks display on New Year's Eve? Is that kind of making up for the 4th of July?
Yep. It is. They had to cancel their 4th of July fireworks due to the COVID, so I believe they're doing this in place of that. Yeah. It's not unusual. Maggie Valley actually had one last year as well, and it was a really big hit for the town.
But I mean, for the lake, that is a little bit off their normal schedule, isn't it?
Yes, sir. It sure is. It sure is.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? Thank you, man. Okay. Okay, hearing no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. We approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, we'll move to our regular agenda. The first item is to request approval of a resolution to purchase 10 cardiac monitors from Zoll Medical Corporation using the exception to the competitive bidding requirements. We have our county attorney, Frank Queen, here. That's under attachment 12. So, welcome, Frank.
Ordinarily, before you buy any major equipment, you have to go through a competitive bidding process. There are exceptions for that. Approval of this is being sought under 2 of those exceptions. One exception is that the price has been determined in a competitive bidding process held not by us, but by some other governmental unit. In this case, some people in Oklahoma bought this same gear at that price after a competitive bidding process. The second part of it is that this equipment needs to come from this manufacturer because it fits into this gear in the ambulances. Everybody's been trained in the earlier model of this gear, and so as a result of that need for standardization, we're in the exception for a competitive bid. Questions?
No question.
Okay, so we need a motion, right, Tracy? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the resolution to purchase 10 cardiac monitors from Zoll Medical Corporation using the exception to competitive bidding requirements.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all those, let's see, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, then next is to request approval to purchase the 10 replacement cardiac monitors from Zoll Medical Corporation to be paid from fiscal year 2021 budgeted funds in 6 annual payments of $59,712.45 to appropriate funds for the total purchase amount of $358,275 and approval for county manager to sign all documentation pertaining to said purchase. Julie, you're here this afternoon.
Well, I think I
tonight.
came down here too quick. I must have gotten anxious.
Okay.
You're not ready to go home, are you?
No, of course not. I could stay
Oh,
here
so
all
Travis
night.
is supposed to do this one, but he's not here.
Well, I can talk about it if
Okay.
you want me to. The EMS got a good deal with Zoll to purchase cardiac monitors. And part of the good deal actually is that they can get the monitors and pay for them over 6 years without having to pay any interest. So that's the good deal, and they wanted to purchase, I think it's $395,000 for 10 monitors. So they're bringing it to you to approve for them to purchase it under the resolution that Frank just approved as an exception to the bidding statutes.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Julie? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion that we approve item 1A of the regular agenda.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and 2 is to request approval of installment debt to be incurred by the Center Pigeon Fire Department for the purchase of 1 Zoll cardiac monitor and 4 annual payments of $10,279.73 for a total amount of $41,118.89 under the same pricing for the county. And go ahead, Julie.
And Center Pigeon Fire Department actually got an even better deal. They did some negotiations with Zoll, trying to stretch it out as close to the 6 years as the county got, and they did get a 5-year term at the same 0% interest, and it's going to be $8,223 a year. Now, the reason they're coming here for your approval is not because of the purchase. It's because whenever fire department enters into any kind of an installment debt, it has to be approved by the commissioners. That's part of their contract. And so I looked at their financials. I didn't have their audit yet, but I got some interim statements, and I talked to Johnny Pless with the Center Pigeon Fire Department and talked with their auditors, and they seem to be able to afford this $8,223 for each year for the next 5 years. They really have very little debt. I think they've got 1 copier lease, but they tend to purchase things with cash. So they seem to be in a good enough shape to be able to pay for this over the next 5 years.
Okay. Okay, so does anybody have any questions for that?
No, I'll move to approve it since they've been here for 4 hours.
Yeah, they deserve it.
Maybe if you need another one, you might tonight's a good night to ask for that.
I second that and commend y'all for staying for the duration of the meeting, because, you know, and coming and representing Center Pigeon Fire Department on their behalf. So appreciate that. That is a second.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. And I
Thank
do
you.
want to thank Center Pigeon for being here and y'all being proactive in getting this piece of equipment. I think that's great for the community out there in Center Pigeon. And we do thank y'all for staying for our entire meeting.
Yeah, Chief
Okay.
Pless had actually reached out to me to tell me about this, so I appreciate that. I hate I couldn't get up with you, Johnny, beforehand, but thank you.
Okay. Okay, then the third item of our regular agenda is to request approval of an amendment to the Haywood County Board of Commissioners Policy and Rules of Procedure. And Bryant, you want to explain that to us?
This should only take me an hour or so to get through. So.
Okay, sure. Everybody else has.
This is a simple amendment to the board's organizational meetings rules. And under public hearings, I'll read the current language. It says, currently, public hearings required by law are deemed advisable by the board, will be scheduled and organized by call to public hearing approved by a majority vote, setting forth the subject, date, place, and time of the hearing. The proposed amendment is simply public hearings required by law or deemed advisable by the board will be scheduled and organized by the county manager and/or clerk to the board. The county manager and/or clerk to the board, working with the county attorney as needed, is responsible for meeting all legal requirements for notice to the public on all public hearings. This just gives us some flexibility, and we've seen it over the last few weeks with the COVID grants that are available, that we have to wait till the board actually meets to call for the public hearing. With these new rules in place, either the clerk or myself, working with Frank, can actually go ahead and notice the public hearing and move it along a little bit quicker, in some cases up to 2 weeks quicker. The grant that David reviewed today is really a first come, first serve basis. If we had this rule in place, we could have probably filed this grant application 2 weeks ago. And so we don't need it in every instance, but when we need to react quicker, this will give us the flexibility to do it.
Does anybody have any questions for Bryant?
I don't have any questions. I think it's a good idea. I would just hope that you would use your discretion, and if something's contentious and you anticipate it's being contentious with the public, that we give that time that we need for them to know about it so they can appear here.
Our commitment is to make the decisions with the chair, so everybody understands.
Well, that's why I want you to use your discretion. You better get me out of here before I say something.
I think your blood sugar's dropping. Your blood sugar's dropping.
I might start saying something like Frank says every time.
I know it can be a little.
Just did.
It can be a little difficult at times, but I remember you asked me about this the other day and kind of gave me a briefing, and I appreciate that. And the more I've thought about it, I know the people have used this the last few times, not necessarily favorable, because I remember the deal in Medford Hills, I guess it was in Clyde, where they came out, and for about a week there, that's all we got was emails and phone calls because they became aware of something that was going to happen. I think had we not had that out in the public meeting before, they wouldn't have had time to prepare. That's my only concern, is how are we going to let them know so that, face it, we don't put our agenda out till Friday. The last thing somebody's going to do on Saturday morning is get up and look and see what the county commissioners are going to do. But if we ask about it or talk about it on a Monday, a lot of times they're kind of ready, whether we need to do something or don't need to do something. I think this takes an element out that they're not going to have time to get ready to talk to us.
Tracy knows more about this than I do, but we'll still have to notice it in the newspaper as required. We'll also post it on our website. So it won't be just that Friday before the board meets. That if
This just speeds it up on the front end, so we're ready to hit the go button.
What we're not doing is waiting the 2 weeks to our next meeting in a situation where it's a first come, first serve on a grant that we need to get our application in, correct?
let's say hypothetically tomorrow we find out that there's a new pot of money released by the state that requires public hearing. We would have to wait now until November 2nd for you guys to notice that there would be a public hearing on November 16th. This way, if we found out tomorrow, we could notice that there would be a public hearing on November 2nd if the timing lined up. So we could save quite a bit of time in that case. I don't expect to use it that much. It's just another tool we have if we have to react quickly. Something contentious, like we were talking about that housing development in Clyde. That one would be actually an example of something because there was a short deadline that we might have to talk about because I can't remember exactly, but we were right up against the deadline for that public hearing. But we still would have to notice it in the paper. We would put it on our website and send it to the sunshine list. We would make sure that we got the word out just as we would now, except not at a meeting.
Is this amended to allow the public hearings to be in the mornings? I thought, for some reason, I thought we passed something that
We did.
we couldn't have public hearings except in the evening. So
No,
this is allowing the public hearings to be in the mornings now as well.
No, we used to have that, but then we changed that in our board rules not too long ago.
Okay.
We voted on.
All right, I missed that.
Right. Yeah, I guess
Not
you did.
uncommon either. For me to
If it's
miss.
controversial, we always try to make sure it's an evening meeting. If it's not controversial, then why wait a month or 2 months to be able to, that's kind of what we were looking at.
That's why you're the chairman.
That's right.
You need a motion to approve
Getting
that?
hungry.
I move to approve the
Second.
amendment.
Yeah, a motion to approve item 3 of the regular agenda. I'll entertain that. Kirk? Did you, okay.
I think
Second?
Tommy second.
Second, okay, all right. Any other,
Tommy.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed?
No.
Okay, it's 4-1.
We needed that. We needed 4-1.
Again.
Need a little change.
Okay. Yeah, that's all we have of our agenda. Does anybody have anything else to come before the board?
I would like to say thank you, if anybody's still listening, with our EMS and all our local fire departments that have been looking for the lost hiker for the last several days. I've kind of been in a little close contact with some people, and they've really put in a big effort. I had one comment about how they had went all in for somebody, it wasn't even from Haywood County, and I said, hey, these guys are blind to where they live. We got somebody lost, they're going to go try to get them. And they've really put a lot of effort and time in, and I don't want to leave here without recognizing those folks for what they've been doing.
Anybody else have a comment? Any other comments? I entertain a motion, we adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Everybody be safe out there.